Family first. It's a noble goal.
They are all into each other. The love is something special.
But what happens when you're stuck between the family you're born into and the one you create?
They isolated themselves and actually became more enmeshed with each other.
Does blood truly run thicker than water? Or can the allure of romantic love ultimately wash all those lifelong loyalties away?
He's under a tremendous amount of pressure now to take care of all of them. They are now a family of 6. Hard to do when you're underemployed.
She sought to have those children live with their biological father, and she didn't like that.
She allegedly asked, does she know any shooters who can take her out?
September 11th, 2017, Detroit, Michigan. It's just before dawn on a Monday morning in America's Motor City.
Detroit is a city of hustle and bustle. Yes, we have blight, yes, we have crime, but I see Detroit as a movement.
You know, you always have that small element of crime, and I don't think that any city can get away from that.
For Detroit police, the day is already off to an urgent start when an emergency call comes in from the city's west side at 6:30 a.m. The caller is a local resident named Walter Knight. He's calling about Tiffany Hunter, the mother of his child.
Tiffany and Walter had a very close relationship, even though they were no longer in a dating relationship.
Walter tells the dispatcher he had grown worried about Tiffany in the middle of the night and decided to check on her.
Walter heard nothing from Tiffany, and he became concerned. He called continually, and there was no response. Walter went to Tiffany's home.
He has a key to the house. He owns the house.
As Walter searched the house for Tiffany, he became more and more uneasy. Something was wrong.
When he walks in, then he finds her lying in a pool of blood.
It was very traumatic. It was blood everywhere. It seemed that she had been brutally assaulted.
Walter tells police to send help fast, so they dispatch officers to Walter's location right away.
When emergency crews arrived, they told him the news that he never thought he would hear. Tiffany was dead. What happened to Tiffany? Who would do this?
41-year-old Tiffany Hunter was a beloved member of her community, known for her lively personality and endless creativity.
She was a mother and a wife and was trying to start her own business. Tiffany wanted to be her ear, nose, and throat specialist.
But the road to opportunity hadn't always been so clear for Tiffany. Growing up in Mobile, Alabama, she faced her share of challenges after an unplanned pregnancy at just 15 years old.
You can handicap yourself by having children early. It doesn't mean that's the end of the story. It just makes things very difficult for you to get past or overcome those circumstances. That was the situation that Tiffany found herself in.
To support her daughter, Amber, Tiffany had to forego college for a job in retail. But over the years, she learned to make the best of it.
Despite some obstacles, she became a manager, a leader, and she also had more kids following her first child.
Tiffany had never been really lucky in love. Both of her children's fathers had not stuck around, and she was left to fend for herself.
She put all of her energy into her kids. They were her world. She didn't have anyone else.
She was especially close to the oldest, Amber. As such a young mom, they practically grew up together. Still, the desire to complete her college degree was always there for Tiffany. Shortly before her 30th birthday, she decided to go for it and moved her family to Detroit. Soon after landing in her new city, Tiffany thought she'd found love. in Walter Knight.
Eventually, the relationship blossomed, which led to the birth of her third child, another daughter.
But her romance with Walter was ultimately short-lived.
For whatever reason, their relationship didn't exactly work out, but Walter still had the wherewithal to look out for Tiffany, making sure that the mother of his child and his child still had a place to live.
Walter owned the house that Tiffany and her kids were living in. So Walter was still in Tiffany's life. Tiffany tried her best to get back into the dating world and even had one more child, Martha. But with all of her energy going into her 4 kids, there was rarely time for anything else.
This was only compounded when Tiffany's daughter Amber started a family of her own. Now she has not only her own kids, but Amber and her boyfriend's children living there too.
By the fall of 2017, however, Tiffany's load was starting to get lighter. Amber and her boyfriend had moved out and gotten a place of their own, and the rest of Tiffany's children were all teenagers or older. They didn't need as much attention from her anymore. For the first time in forever, Tiffany was finally able to focus on herself.
She had just completed her bachelor's degree, Mary Grove College, and she was going back for her master's.
She also just started dating a new guy named Noah.
Tiffany saw Noah as a strong presence and looked at him as a protector. She was just starting to feel out where the relationship could go, but she was really attracted to him.
Here Tiffany is in her second act. She's in her prime. She's flourishing.
But now, the beloved mother and grandmother has been found on the floor of her dining room, lying in a pool of blood. And her ex-boyfriend, Walter, is a total wreck.
The officers at that point, they secure the scene as best that they can. They start to make notifications. One of those notifications is to homicide. I get there, I go to where my partner was, and I can see the victim on the floor. She was laying on top of a pillow.
When they looked at the condition of Tiffany's body, they also realized that she was stabbed multiple times, almost 70 times. Who takes the time to stab someone and then put a pillow beneath their head?
My mindset was like, this is a rage thing. To stab a person, in my opinion, once or twice, okay, I didn't mean to do it. I kind of lost control of myself. But anything over 10 is suggesting that you are very angry and that you really want this to hurt this person.
It was very emotional. It was very intentional. This was a very personal murder. Who would do this? Why?
"41-year-old Tiffany Hunter had moved to Detroit to fulfill her dreams.
She managed to raise her children, and then she attempted to start or do a restart of her life and going back to school.
But now, her ex-boyfriend, Walter Knight, has walked into a nightmare. And Detroit police have no doubt they are working with a homicide.
She was a very well-respected person in her community and at work. So to see that happen to a person like that, it's like, why? Why does that take place?
She was stabbed in the face and in the head. It looks like they had to be from a knife. They also noticed that there's some blunt force trauma to the back of her head from a hammer or some other blunt force instrument.
Your mindset is, who has access to do this? We know nobody broke in on her because the door wasn't kicked. You can, see a little bit of disarray in the house. Blood stain on the floor, blood stains in the kitchen.
There in the kitchen, police find a promising piece of evidence.
We couldn't find a murder weapon, but we did find a lot of blood, as if somebody was trying to maybe wash it off. It was blood on the handles, the faucet. It was blood up underneath the sink on cleaning products and stuff like that. We swabbed blood. We took a lot of samples that we thought DNA was on.
A lot of times when you have a stabbing victim, the killer ends up cutting himself in the process. So it is possible that this blood could be more than just the victim's DNA. It could also be the killer's.
But it takes a while for that information to come back, the DNA testing to be done.
In the meantime, investigators build their potential suspect list.
There was no signs of forced entry in the home. This wasn't an armed robbery. It wasn't a robbery gone bad. It was someone that she knew, and someone who was very, very upset with her.
The only person at that time who had access, the ability to get in, was Walter. He had a key to the house, which he owns, by the way. And it was easy to look at that and say, we need to take a deep dive into this person.
Police start out by asking Walter about the last time he saw Tiffany. Walter says Tiffany had come over for dinner at his place Saturday night. The evening went late, so he offered to let her stay in his guest room.
Walter cares about Tiffany. He didn't want her leaving his house at an odd time of night, so she stayed the night. And then the next day, they were supposed to go to their respective churches.
On Sunday morning, Tiffany left his house as planned. Walter says he had no idea it was the last time he would ever speak to her.
This is a very good friend, a former lover, former girlfriend, and the mother of his child, where he knew something wasn't right.
Unable to sleep, Walter says he got up around 4 a.m. Monday morning and headed for Tiffany's house. But it's this detail that brings more questions for police.
Walter had to be very, very concerned to go there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Why not wait till a decent hour in the morning?
He's telling police that he woke up around 4 a.m. worried, but he didn't call police until about 6:30 a.m. that morning. So what was he doing all of that time?
Apparently his car breaks down, so he borrows his mother's car to get over there.
After that happened, he makes it to the house, uses his key to get in, and then he discovers her deceased.
The fact that she had spent the night with him the night before is a little suspect, and that you don't call the police to do a well-being check. You go check on her yourself, but at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we already know that there's no signs of forced entry there.
Walter is telling police that Tiffany's children are all spread out these days, and she doesn't see them that much. So the odds of one of them being the ones that entered into the house was unlikely.
Their suspicion towards Walter only increases when he asks them who he thinks could be responsible for Tiffany's murder. That's when the grieving ex-boyfriend suddenly shuts down.
Walter not speaking to the police is actually a code of conduct in the streets, especially in the Detroit community.
Police know they aren't making any more leeway with Walter until he gets some rest.
He's tired, he's emotional, but so far police are not able to uncover anything that would prove that he's guilty. With almost 70 stab wounds, you would think that there would be like a speck of blood or something that he forgot to clean up. So the police had no choice but to let him go.
By now, the sun is starting to rise over the city, and residents of Tiffany's tight-knit community are beginning to wonder what's going on.
It was a decent neighborhood, very walkable. It was one of those neighborhoods where you can get out with your dog and your family.
Investigators start to canvass the neighborhood. Did anyone see anything? Did anyone hear anything?
The first thing we're looking for is who has a doorbell cam, who has surveillance on the outside, security cameras on the outside, but there were none. On the morning of September 10th, her neighbor described hearing screams from the house and then looking out of the window, but didn't see anything crazy, no cars speeding off, nothing that stood out to her as unusual other than hearing those screams. But she had the wherewithal to text Tiffany to say, hey, are you okay? She didn't receive a response, and it just kind of dissipated from there.
Police began to ask about coming and going of other people who've come to the house, and the neighbor's able to give some information to the police about someone that Tiffany had been dating, a person by the name of Noah.
After finding the body of 41-year-old Tiffany Hunter stabbed to death, Detroit police have been on the hunt for a suspect.
Her daughter Amber was busy with a family of her own, and her other kids were grown. Tiffany was starting a new chapter in her life, and it made it hard to track down those new people that were in her life.
Now, a neighbor of Tiffany's has brought a new person of interest to light: her boyfriend, Noah Harmon.
There were rumors that Noah was physically abusive towards Tiffany. She was spending time with men in her life like Walter to help create distance from Noah so that she could feel safe.
When you get a person on your radar, or when a person of interest comes into the scene, we do a full workup on them. We want to know what his criminal history was, if he was capable of doing this thing.
And that caused the police to look even deeper into Noah.
Eager to know more about Tiffany's latest love interest, police bring Noah Harmon in for an interview.
He came on his own free will. He was very emotional. We have this thing in the police department. The person who fighting for his life, the person that's telling me stuff that I didn't even ask about, that happened 2 months and 2 years ago, yeah, he probably the person that's innocent. Noah was that guy.
Until the conversation starts to turn and it looks like now you're treating me or talking to me like I'm a suspect, and then he becomes defensive. I had nothing to do with the death of Tiffany.
Eventually, Noah insists he's done talking. So police turn to another popular investigative tool, the polygraph.
Now, what's interesting about this is that Noah actually fails this test. But it's important to note that failing a polygraph test is not indicative of guilt.
A lot of times the police would get a person to take a polygraph test, and if they fail it, then they confront them with it, and then ultimately, with a little more prodding, they come out with what the truth is. Well, Noah still held fast to his story that he had nothing to do with the death of Tiffany. He very convincingly was telling the police, look, I failed the polygraph test, but take my DNA.
Police agreed to take a sample of Noah's DNA and send it off for testing.
Forensics, on a case like this, or in most cases now, technology is your friend, right? So we were able to get his phone based on his information, where he was, who he was with. It was clearly obvious that he was not there.
There is one man police know was at the scene, Walter Knight. And as more time goes by, investigators keep coming back to the likely killer being one of these two men.
That's what we were doing. We were weighing it. Who's cooperating and who's not? Who's being elusive and who's telling the truth?
Walter said he had nothing to do with it, and even though we have him coming to our house at 4 o'clock in the morning with a key, but she's in a relationship with someone else. So it kind of brings everybody into the fold. Somebody's not telling the truth here as to what happened. One of these guys looks like they are the responsible one.
Police decide to bring both men back in for a follow-up interview. When they sit down with Noah, he once again seems willing to cooperate with police.
Noah did not pass his polygraph test, but he was compliant with the investigation. Noah was very forthcoming and wanted to engage with the investigators to be able to help solve this murder.
While the subject of his relationship with Tiffany had been difficult for Noah to discuss, when talk turns to her ex-boyfriend Walter, Noah doesn't hold back.
Noah identified that Walter and Tiffany had also had a history of conflict.
We have to dig a little deeper to see what's actually going on here. In doing so, we find out that the relationship with Walter and Tiffany wasn't all that great either.
Noah was able to identify it to the police that there was ongoing conflict and even violence that occurred throughout their relationship. So she decided to take out a protection order.
But an unforeseen twist in the case left everyone questioning the truth. Detectives are taking a closer look at two men that were in Tiffany Hunter's life at the time of her murder. But so far, it's been hard to build a case against her boyfriend, Noah Harmon.
Yeah, he had a checkered past, but did he have the means to do this? And does his checkered past mean that he has the accessibility to do this? And we found those answers to be no.
Noah actually had an alibi where he was with another woman.
When it comes to Tiffany's ex-boyfriend Walter Knight, however, police are learning it's an entirely different ballgame.
The key factor in this is this protective order against him. Why would Tiffany do this? What were the challenges in this relationship that led her to feel not safe around him?
Noah had shared with law enforcement that Tiffany was concerned because previously Walter had overstepped the boundaries, entered the home, and also threatened her because she was entertaining other men.
You have to understand that it was Walter's house that Tiffany was in, and so Walter, from our understanding, he didn't like that.
When police confront Walter with these accusations, they're shocked to see he doesn't try to deny them.
He told me that he thought it was disrespectful that she had other men in the house going. You know, they were still having sexual relationships.
From Walter's perspective, there was no clear boundaries, and in unhealthy relationships, often there is no clear boundaries. Walter felt that he was free to do what he wanted to do.
As Tiffany was working to remove herself from her current love relationship, she found refuge with Walter Knight.
Walter, he admits that we didn't always have the perfect relationship, but that doesn't mean that I would do anything to harm her. In fact, she came to me because I was her place of safety. And that's why she was with me the night before, and that's why I was concerned about not hearing from her.
But when police try to dig in more to his whereabouts that night, once again, Walter starts to shut down.
When we talked to him, where were you? You know, well, I was here. No, you wasn't. Well, okay, I wasn't. Well, where were you? I don't have to tell you that. Did he have to tell us for clarity's sake and for manpower's sake? Yeah, he absolutely should have told us. Every time we engaged this person, it was deception. And so from a police standpoint, you know, what does that look like for us, right? He got to be the guy.
That's when police offer Walter the same deal they made with Noah. Hand us your phone and let technology do the talking.
Walter, you know, he allowed us to extract his phone, to find out, you know, what kind of conversations that they were having, even where he was.
There's one data point in particular that's especially crucial in building Walter's timeline for police.
Walter's alibi was that in the middle of the night he endured some car trouble, and so he had to contact family members in order to provide transportation.
That cell phone information put him there. You know, if you're a savvy person, you know, everybody knows that the police does cell phones now, right? That's a thing, right? Now, everybody knows that, you know, you don't take your cell phone nowhere if you're getting ready to do something that you're not supposed to do. We started getting into his assets, his properties, to figure out what he owned, you know, doing title searches and stuff like that. So we were really scrambling and really trying to connect him to this case. And with the information that we had based on what he was giving us, I truly feel like had we presented a warrant for him, it would have gotten signed.
There's just one more piece of evidence the police need to build their case: DNA. But when the results of blood found at the scene come in, they bring disheartening news.
The DNA was not a match to Walter Knight or Noah Hardin.
It's a big blow for investigators who've spent months building a case against Walter.
We were actually going after the wrong person, and it wasn't because we were trying to, you know, railroad him. It was because he had such a disdain for law enforcement, and you know, his position was, I don't have to tell you anything. And because he was so deceiving and untruthful, it was like, okay, he has to be the guy. The worst feeling in the world as a homicide detective, in my opinion, is to work a case and not being able to go to a person's family and say, we got the person that killed your baby. To let a case go cold with no leads is the worst feeling in the world.
5 months after Tiffany Hunter's murder, in February of 2018, an unexpected call promises to break the case wide open.
A few weeks after they are able to establish alibis, they get a tip.
We're in the office and Detective Clemens get a call.
The caller is saying he is very concerned about his daughter. He tells police that he's the father of Tiffany's youngest daughter, Martha. Martha has been devastated since her mother's death, but recently he learned that there is more to the story.
Martha had disclosed to her father that Amber had actually asked her to help kill her mother.
It's been 5 months since 41-year-old Tiffany Hunter was murdered inside her Detroit area home. Now, police may finally be on their way to getting some answers, after a man comes forward claiming his daughter Martha Ferguson knows the killer.
Martha's father contacted the police and disclosed that she was concerned that Tiffany actually was murdered by her daughter.
On February 17, 2018, Martha Ferguson and her father agreed to meet with police and provide a statement.
He brings her in and she lays the whole thing out.
Amber wanted her mother out of her life. She was searching for someone to actually bring her mother to a demise.
Martha says that Amber had always butted heads with her mother. Only 15 years apart in age, Amber sometimes felt like she had a peer when she wanted a parent. Amber had fallen into her mother's same path of getting pregnant at a young age, growing up too fast.
The relationship with her ex-husband, Carl, didn't work out. And at the same time, she needed support from her mom, but she didn't want to take her mom's advice.
Tiffany was always putting pressure on Amber to get a job, pull more weight in her relationship with her boyfriend, Carl, trying to push her daughter out of the nest a bit more, when Amber was feeling like she needed her mom more than ever.
She went through the motions. She got married to her baby father, Carl, and tried to accept this life as her own.
But it wasn't until Amber met her current husband, Javante Wakefield, that her family frustrations turned into fiery hatred.
Javante was someone she felt she could connect to. She felt understood for the first time.
Javante promised to take care of her, completely changed her world around. He was her dream come true.
But Martha says the more time Amber spent with Javante, the more her family began to notice a change in her personality.
They are all into each other. The love is something special. He'll do anything for her, she'll do anything for him. It's just that tight of a bond for them. They're all over social media, they're hugged up. Javante Wakefield may have bitten off a little more than he could chew in getting with Amber and adding to the family, because she comes to the table with 2 children. They have 2 more children together. He's under a tremendous amount of pressure now to take care of all of them. They are now a family of 6. Hard to do when you're underemployed in Mobile, Alabama, so he comes to Detroit looking for opportunity.
In the meantime, they all have to move in with Tiffany.
She felt like Amber should have taken more of an ownership role over her life, as opposed to living with her and having her now husband since 2014 living with her.
But when Tiffany was finally able to push Amber out on her own, Martha says that things only got worse.
There was financial instability, and that often caused conflict. But Amber and Javante did not feel like they had enough support within their family to make some changes. And so they isolated themselves and actually became more enmeshed with each other.
They are living in a state of squalor. They're just barely in a home. They're almost homeless. To add insult to injury, Amber's first husband, Carl, is looking to take his 2 children from Amber because he doesn't like the conditions that they're living in. Amber's mom, Tiffany, is siding with Carl.
She sought to have those children live with their father, their biological father. And Amber didn't like that at all. She didn't like that.
Martha tells police that Amber was convinced this was the happiest she had ever been. She couldn't risk having her mother take it all away.
Amber had let Martha know that she did not want her mother to actually participate in the investigation or the court procedures regarding her against her kids.
That's when Martha says Amber came up with a plan that could keep her family intact, just the way she wanted. According to Martha, Amber was under the impression her mom had a hefty life insurance policy.
Really, the motivation for the money was to please her spouse, Javante. Javante wanted the money.
I'm desperate. I know that Tiffany has a life insurance policy on her life, of which the beneficiary is going to be Amber, her first child. If something happens to Tiffany, then that may be the solution. That may be the answer to all our problems.
Amber tells Martha that she needs to get rid of Tiffany. It's the only way to get the financial freedom that her husband desperately wants. She does not want her mother to go to court to talk against her and Javante when it comes to the co-parenting.
Amber allegedly goes to Martha and asks Martha, does she know any shooters who can take Tiffany out?
But when Martha refused to have any part of it, Amber and Javante were convinced they could carry it all out themselves.
So Martha actually shares with the police investigators that Amber told her on September 9th that they were going to commit the crime.
Amber told Martha that Javante went in through the window of her mother's house, snapping a picture once he was safely inside.
He takes a selfie with a painting in the background that Amber knows is in Tiffany's house to show Amber that I am here and I'm waiting on her to get home.
It was a significant thing because it was in his phone, it was in the tablet, it was in the devices that they were communicating about that Amber's sister told us about. She said, hey, they communicating on tablets and phones through Facebook Messenger or whatever.
Police pull the phone records and find all Martha promised and more. On March 5th, 2018, they're ready to serve warrants to both Amber Hunter and her husband, Javante Wakefield. There's just one problem.
Unfortunately, they can't find Javante and Amber because they're on the run.
At this point, where we had a vision board in the office with Amber's picture on it, they said, I'm gonna get you fill in the blanks. That's what our focus was.
Thanks to a tip from Tiffany Hunter's youngest daughter, Martha, police finally have two clear suspects in their sights. Tiffany's oldest daughter, Amber Hunter, and her husband, Javante Wakefield.
Once we got the story from Martha, we started, obviously, it was like, okay, the flame is on now. We were at a simmer, and now we're on high.
The Detroit police, coupled with the FBI, as long as they know Amber and Javante, to bring them back into custody.
And we were getting information. She was paid out the insurance money from her mom's death. And when we started running our cars, it just started coming together.
Soon, police are able to trace the couple miles outside of Detroit to Youngstown, Ohio.
They used that insurance money to start this bakery business in Youngstown. And ironically, that is how we found them. We were able to get on the phone with the authorities in Youngstown, and it just all started coming together. It was like watching a movie, for real. You know, it just all started, the pieces were falling in place.
Law enforcement followed the trail to Youngstown, Ohio, where they raid the home of Amber and Javante.
Javante and Amber, they don't put up a fight. They go peacefully. The jig is up. We've been found out. We were living a high life as a result of what we did, but the cost of what we did is about to come into fruition now.
On March 9th, 2018, Javante Wakefield and Amber Hunter are taken into custody and charged with the murder of Tiffany Hunter.
Obviously, we went in and we confiscated all electronic devices because we had got the information from Martha that they were communicating over the electronic devices and Facebook. Detective Clemens and I, we found this letter. The letter was an apology letter to Tiffany saying that I'm sorry for what I did.
But when police bring Javante in for an interview back at the station, he's not as quick to take the blame.
Like I said, then I'm telling you now, I had nothing to do with it or have nothing to hide.
He was just kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. What about the text messages you guys were doing over Facebook and that kind of stuff?
What text messages?
There was some communication between you guys two folks.
I mean, of course, me and her were married, so we're going to text.
No, I understand that. And there's some pictures, you know? Some of this is ringing a bell.
Pictures?
Yeah, when you were inside the house at Tiffany's house.
What pictures, though?
His position was prove it. I didn't do it. And he stayed there. That was his position.
Can I see my lawyer?
Yeah, if you want to talk to your attorney, I'm done. We can't talk. You know that, right? Okay. Nope, I appreciate it.
As Javante lawyers up and effectively ends communication with police, investigators turn their attention to Amber.
She was very smiley, really nonchalant, kind of like, yeah, I hear you, but no. Politely telling me no, as if she had it all figured out. I probably got about maybe 10 questions in, or who's Tiffany Hunter to you? My mom. What's your relationship to Javante? My husband. How long y'all been married? Just some general stuff, right? And just before I could get into the meat of it, she was like, yeah, I don't want to talk no more. I want a lawyer.
But when the couple hears their charges announced for the first time in court days later, suddenly, Amber is ready to change her tune.
Then it was like, yeah, this is real.
Amber entered into a plea offer, which was 25 years to 50 years. That's a reduction in the charge from a first-degree murder to a second-degree murder.
A plea agreement, you get to talk to the prosecutor and you get to have your come to Jesus moment, and you get to say whatever it is without any further penalty. So the prosecutor will say, okay, I'll give you this, but you gotta tell me the truth as to what happens.
During the preparation of the plea agreement, Amber disclosed to investigators that Javante was the mastermind and actually correlated him with the crime.
She's literally throwing Javante under the bus. This was his plan to get my mother's insurance proceeds because of the conditions that we were in. This was all his idea, not mine, his idea.
Amber goes along with Javante's plan because she loves him so much and she feels killing her mother is the only way that they can stay together. Amber doesn't hate her mom. She's motivated by her obsession with Javante and the fact that she does not want to lose him.
That night, Javante climbed in through a window of the home. Then he proceeded to wait for Tiffany to get home.
Tiffany was with Walter. When she left him, she comes home. And Javante strikes her in the back of the head with a hammer. When you're in a rage or when you are uncontrollably doing so, yeah, 69 times is plausible.
He's in such an adrenaline rush that he didn't realize he cut himself in the process and that he's left DNA all over the crime scene.
Amber says that after he did the murder, he got on the bus. And on the way to the bus, he threw the hammer away. He kept the clothes and put them in bags and got rid of them. He destroyed the evidence. This is what she's saying.
On January 17th, 2019, Amber Hunter pleads guilty to second-degree murder and is sentenced to 25 to 50 years in prison.
Once Javante was faced with the reality of the impact of the legal system, he realized that he was not able to actually beat the case because Amber identified him as the mastermind, and he decided to take the plea agreement himself.
More than 2 years later, in April 2022, Javante Wakefield finally accepted a second-degree murder plea as well.
You never really know what really happened. It's always, we call it a three-sided coin. It's Amber's version, it's Javante's version, and then there's the truth.
Javante and Amber actually echoed each other's attitude and behaviors. Even though that they were problematic, both of them encouraged each other and influenced each other to commit the crime.
This was one of those cases where communication would have solved this, but because nobody knew how to communicate in this case, it ended up in the death of Tiffany Hunter. I think if everybody knew how to convey and respect the feelings of everybody else or each other, she would still be here.
What's so unfortunate about this case is that Tiffany never gets to realize her comeback story. All of Tiffany's dreams and aspirations died on that day.
Marriage can bring a new chapter for many. The passing of a baton from your old family to new. But the vow to be together until death do us part takes on a different meaning when you're dealing with murder. The safety and security of the bond you've created can be hard to hold on to when you're separated by bars. True love is the best kind of love.
They kind of have this whirlwind romance, right? They fall fast.
And when it becomes more than just undeniable attraction.
His family had took her in. She felt like Joshua Nick's family was her family.
You become desperate to hang on to your man no matter the cost.
She's thinking that we're just gonna beat him up, teach him a lesson, but things take a turn.
In the chaos of that moment, it had gone further than I imagined.
Desperation can lead you down a dangerous road.
So she then had a decision to make about how much further she wanted to go.
And cost you everything that matters most.
She lost the things that were most important to her, the people who were most important to her, everything.
April 1st, 2017, Long Island, New York. The sun has yet to dawn on one of New York's most famous suburbs, one residents affectionately call Strong Island.
Long Island is broken up into primarily two counties. We have Nassau County and Suffolk County. One of the primary reasons is because the homes out here tend to be a bit less expensive. You know, even if you're looking for someplace that maybe has better school districts where you can really have that suburban living.
While Suffolk County offers upscale suburban living, it has its share of underserved communities too, like the small hamlet of Wyandanch.
Wyandanch, what you would consider an underprivileged neighborhood within the suburbs.
The things that you see in Wyandanch, you won't really find in any other areas of either Suffolk or Nassau County, right? The abandoned houses, things of that nature.
It's a low-income neighborhood. It's mostly African Americans, some Hispanics, but it's dead set in the middle of Suffolk County, Long Island.
Suffolk County police officers are on routine patrol when they spot a frantic man trying to get their attention.
He flagged down the police officers, and he said that he had found a body. Police officers originally, I don't know if they believed him or not.
Hoping this is some kind of bad April Fool's joke, the officers follow the man to an abandoned house at the corner of 28th Street and Long Island Avenue. But once inside, no one's laughing.
So the space is completely run down. Clearly this is a house that no one has lived in quite some time. Paint is peeling, it's disheveled. It looks clearly like there's been some drug activity here, maybe some people who have been squatting.
The officers soon make a gruesome discovery. The body of a young black male is lying on the floor with a pool of dried blood around his head.
What was different about the condition of this body is it had no clothes on.
When homicide detectives arrive on the scene, they note the victim has sustained injuries consistent with a beating and possible strangulation.
Those are all indications that it's not an overdose. It's evidence of a physical altercation, a crime that likely resulted in this death.
Authorities begin collecting potential evidence. They find beer cans and duct tape, but the victim's personal effects are nowhere to be found.
There's no ID, there's no wallet, there's nothing there. And so to law enforcement, there are a couple of things going through their minds. Did this person, one, pass away here? Were they just kind of brought and left here?
Investigators could tell that the body had been there for quite some time because of the way his feet were positioned. It seemed like rigor mortis had already set and stiffening of the body limbs were already happening.
This also looks like someone that no one has been looking for. And so law enforcement are thinking, is this a situation where this is where he was staying and so he has no family?
The brutality of the slaying and the use of an abandoned house as the possible execution site leads detectives to believe that they could be dealing with either a gang or drug-related murder. The victim's body is transported to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy.
Through the dental records, they find out that this deceased person is Alan Moore.
22-year-old Alan Moore grew up on Long Island, where he endured a difficult childhood.
He didn't really have a family unit. His mother was unable to raise him. He didn't have any relationship with his father. His grandparents had at one point taken custody of him, but unfortunately they were not able to keep him, and so he had to go into the foster care system. Within the foster care system, he kind of bounced around from house to house.
Alan was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at a young age, which occasionally caused him to lash out. The instability of Alan's living situation did not help his mental health challenges.
For Alan to not really have family, or to not really have people who were behind him, it's very difficult to manage that on your own.
Alan lived in the foster care system until he aged out at 21.
Teens who age out of the foster care system, they don't have a home to go to. They often end up homeless. And so this was really what ended up being Alan Moore's fate, right? And so he kind of becomes transient. He's bouncing around from place to place, staying with friends.
Alan finally found some stability when he moved in with his grandfather in West Hempstead, New York, about 30 miles from Wyandanch.
He was trying to build a relationship where at some point he had moved in with his grandfather, and, you know, he really was trying to find a sense of belonging.
Hoping to make a fresh start, Alan got a job working as an overnight janitor at a soul food restaurant.
Alan's grandfather lived in a rough part of town, you know, at the corner of Terrace Avenue and Jackson Street in the Bedell Terrace apartments.
The Bedell Terrace apartments, they call it the Terrace Ave apartments. It's a low-income housing. It's a lot of crime there.
You know, this could have made it difficult for a kid like Alan, you know, someone who was already struggling trying to get his life moving in the right direction.
Now, investigators want to know how Alan's body wound up in an abandoned house, battered and bloody. An autopsy has confirmed that Alan was strangled to death.
The medical examiner then is able to see that he was, in essence, beaten, right? Almost tortured.
Investigators also learn Alan put up a fight.
There were skin cells underneath Alan's fingernails to indicate that he was struggling with somebody.
Given the state of his body, the medical examiner believes Alan died a few days before he was discovered.
His time of death was either the late hours of March 27th or early hours of March 28th.
The victim was found naked, but there are no signs of sexual trauma.
When you have a new body, it either indicates sexual assault or somebody's hiding identification. So whoever was responsible for this didn't want the person to be identified. It usually indicates that the person who's deceased has some type of relation to the person who's responsible.
Authorities canvass the neighborhood, but no one reports hearing or seeing anything suspicious.
When you think about a crime like this, it shows that there had to have been motive.
But who had motive to kill Alan Moore in such gruesome fashion? Little did police know Alan Moore had been the target of a sinister plot. A plot that, once exposed, would unveil a twisted web of love, loyalty, and deadly deception. On April 1st, 2017, the body of 22-year-old Alan Moore was found in an abandoned house on Long Island, New York. After conducting an autopsy, the Suffolk County medical examiner has confirmed Alan was beaten and strangled to death. Authorities learn Alan's brother, sister, and grandfather all live on Long Island, and they notify them of his death.
And when they speak with the family, it kind of hit a roadblock because Alan's sister tells detectives that she hadn't seen her brother in months.
The fact that they hadn't spoken to him in months was customary. They would hear from him for a little bit, and then he would disappear for maybe months at a time and then reappear. So when law enforcement comes around, they aren't really able to provide any information on who he's been running with.
But Alan's sister does give them a potential lead.
She says that Alan has been dating a woman named Nia Cleveland.
Investigators had suspected the motive for Alan's murder might be personal. Now they wonder if his girlfriend is somehow involved.
Nia tells the police that her and Alan dated, but they broke up about a month ago, and she hadn't seen or talked to him since March 12th or 13th.
Police ask Alan's girlfriend where she was on the night he was killed.
She's able to provide police officers with an alibi for the time frame, right, that they're thinking that Alan was killed. And with that time frame and where she says that she was, they're able to kind of clear her as a person of interest.
But Nia does point investigators to a potential motive.
A lot of people had said that he was really involved in some bad situation. Unfortunately, he was also known to walk around with a gun.
Investigators questioned people around Alan's neighborhood and learned that a month before his death, he was a suspect in a shooting at a Hempstead, New York bus station. As investigators look into the Hempstead shooting, they learn something else.
There was also an incident where Alan is jumped by a group of guys.
After searching police records, investigators learn Alan was jumped by a group of young black men about a month before his death. They beat him so severely, he had to be hospitalized for several days.
So now law enforcement are trying to figure out who these men were and why, right? And, did they possibly come back to finish the job?
Investigators now have a possible motive for Alan Moore's murder, but it doesn't make finding his killers any easier.
There's so many different angles. And so trying to figure out who would want him dead, the possibilities for law enforcement and trying to trace back his life becomes very difficult.
Suffolk County Police have learned 22-year-old Alan Moore was severely beaten by a group of young men and hospitalized a month before his murder. They are also looking into allegations that Alan was involved in a local shooting around that same time. They wonder if these two incidents are related, and if they are, did they lead to Alan's untimely death? Police canvassed the Wyandanch neighborhood where Alan was found, questioning everyone they can.
Of course, in the neighborhood that this happens in, no one is talking to law enforcement, right? We're just kind of hearing through the grapevine of, it might have been this person, it might have been connected to this, but they aren't really able to substantiate any of these links that they're just kind of hearing.
Police can't find Alan's phone, but they obtain a warrant to search his social media accounts.
They're able to get into his Facebook messages. And in these Facebook messages are countless messages between him and many other women. It's clear that he had been involved, right, with many different women and was open to being sexually involved with these different women.
Investigators do a deep dive into Alan's online messages. Could one of these women have information about what happened to Alan?
So now police officers are tasked with the daunting, possibility of reaching out or trying to figure out which one of these messages are actually related in any way to this crime. And so they have to kind of see which women did he actually meet up with.
Then, investigators finally uncover something promising. A message dated March 27th.
It just so happens to fall right around the time that they believe Alan was killed.
It's from a woman named Jaquana Bates, asking Alan if he'd like to get together and smoke some weed.
There's a little bit of a flirtatious nature to the text messages, right? That they're gonna meet up.
Alan thought of himself as someone who liked to play around, saw a lot of women. So when Jaquana reached out to him, he thought there was a chance to, have a good time with her.
Investigators know Allen's last address was at the Bedell Terrace Apartments in Hempstead.
One of the steps the police used to figure out what happened was reliance on cameras. And because of the high crime history of the Terrace Apartments, there were plenty of cameras that were established in the area.
Police get the surveillance footage from the Bedell Terrace Apartments around the time that they believe Allen was murdered.
In footage time-stamped March 27th, 2:13 a.m., investigators see a white SUV pull up to the Bedell Terrace Apartments. Then, they see Allen Moore exit the building.
So at 2:13 a.m., they see Allen come out of his apartment, and he goes into this car with a young woman. They can't see her face. She has a black hoodie on.
There was a guy in the front seat who got out and got in the back seat, and Allen jumped in the front seat, and the young lady wearing the hood got behind the wheel.
Additional CCTV footage tracks the SUV driving south on Terrace Avenue. The white SUV is captured on surveillance cameras intermittently for the next hour.
At 3:33 a.m., they see the white Chevrolet SUV pull up, and a red vehicle pulls up. A black male comes out of the vehicle and goes into the white Chevrolet SUV.
After 10 minutes, both vehicles leave the scene.
With the surveillance the investigators have on the vehicles, at approximately 4 a.m. is the last time that they have on site, so they lose them at that point.
Police run the license plates on the white SUV.
They were able to confirm that the SUV was registered to Daquana Bates.
Daquana Bates, the woman who sent Allen a message inviting him to meet up. Investigators are finally making headway, but then they hit a snag.
They're trying to figure out who this car belongs to, and they hit a roadblock because the registration and the license plates don't match.
One thing investigators have figured out is that the 3 people captured on video are somehow involved in Allen Moore's murder.
With the surveillance footage, investigators were actually able to confirm that these were the people that were with Allen the last time he was alive.
But police still have more questions than answers. If the woman in the footage is Daquana Bates, who is the other man in the white SUV? And who was driving the red sedan?
How do we understand who these people were in this red car, and how are they related to the white Chevrolet SUV?
Detectives want to bring Daquana Bates in for questioning. They're hoping she will be the key to solving Allen's murder. Suffolk County Police have obtained CCTV security footage that captured murder victim Allen Moore being picked up by a woman and a man in a white SUV on the night of March 27th, 2017.
After reviewing surveillance footage, the authorities were able to determine that a white SUV met up with a red sedan, and after about 10 minutes of observation, the police noticed that both of these cars rolled off in the same direction.
Investigators have yet to positively ID these people, but they suspect them of being involved in the 22-year-old's brutal slaying, even though the footage does not place them directly at the crime scene.
At this point in their investigation, the authorities are fairly certain that Daquana Bates is the registered owner of a white Chevrolet Trailblazer, a Trailblazer which is an exact match for the vehicle that picked up Allen Moore on March 27th.
But they can't say for certain that, it's Daquana that picked up Allen, because the woman in the footage is wearing a hoodie.
When investigators run the plates on the red sedan, they don't match DMV records.
During their investigation, the authorities are able to find out that the red sedan is registered to a married couple, Larry and Sonetta Dennis, who live in Bellport, Long Island.
So now investigators are wondering, what connection does this couple have with Daquana Bates and to Allen Moore?
Investigators start digging into the Dennises and learn that Sonetta has a 27-year-old son named Joshua Nickens, who lives with her and Larry. When authorities run background checks, they discover Joshua did a stint behind bars at the Gouverneur Correctional Facility, and he was just released a month earlier, in February 2017.
As investigators begin questioning individuals in Joshua's Bellport neighborhood, they find out that he has a girlfriend, and her name is Daquana Bates.
26-year-old Daquana Bates grew up in Bellport, Long Island.
She's the middle child of 3 siblings. She has a younger brother and an older sister. Father wasn't really into life, raised by a single mom who was really doing the best she could to raise 3 kids on her own.
At some point, Daquana's mother moved them to Hempstead.
Hempstead is kind of known for being a lower income area of Nassau County. And so we kind of know that this family is doing the best that they can, what they've been given.
By most accounts, Daquana stayed out of trouble. She graduated from Hempstead High School in 2010.
We know from her family members that, Daquana was a relatively good student in high school.
At a young age, Daquana got pregnant and gave birth to a baby boy. Now, a single mom like her own mother, Daquana realized she didn't want that kind of life for herself and her child.
When you've grown up in a single-parent household and doesn't really feel like she has any father figures, men kind of possibly coming in and out of the home, and so there's this kind of yearning, right, for that family unit.
Then, Daquana finds what she has been looking for when she meets Joshua Nickens.
She meets Joshua, and they kind of have this whirlwind romance, right? They fall fast, and Daquana falls hard.
Joshua brought her home to meet his mother, Sunetta Dennis, and his stepfather, Larry Dennis.
My understanding is that Sunetta's a strong character. She's the matriarch of this family.
For the first time, she's kind of seeing what a family unit looks like, right? Joshua comes from a home with mom and also has his stepdad, and they welcome Daquana in kind of with open arms, right? And she starts to feel like she really is a part of this family. And so that really binds Daquana to Joshua very quickly.
But what Daquana didn't know yet was that Joshua was in trouble.
Sometime in the relationship, Joshua does a short stint in jail. But at this point in the relationship, Daquana is sticking by her man, right? She decides to stay with him. She waits for him to come out.
Daquana and her infant son move in with Larry and Sunetta while Joshua is in jail.
Daquana felt like she had unconditional love from the Dennis family. They took her in without questions asked, and they took care of her child that wasn't their grandchild. She felt love and she felt an allegiance to them just as much as she did for Joshua.
As investigators worked to connect the dots between Daquana Bates and Alan Moore, they learned Daquana wasn't the only person Larry and Sunetta Dennis opened their home to.
If we think about Larry and Sunetta Dennis, they're kind of like the halfway house, right, for people. They're kind of taking people in, and they are very generous with their home. We know that they take in Daquana. We know that at some point, Alan is staying there.
In a surprising discovery, police learn Alan's ex-girlfriend, Nia Cleveland, is the daughter of Sunetta Dennis and Joshua Nickens' stepsister.
She was the reason why Alan Moore was often in Bellport at the Dennis home, and that's how he came to know them.
They knew he was struggling. He was bouncing from couch to couch at the time, and they wanted to help him out, and it wasn't a problem for Sunetta or Larry to let him stay there for as long as he needed.
But now, police are interested in speaking with the Dennises to find out what they might know about Alan Moore's murder.
Authorities wonder what could possibly have happened between Alan and the Dennises to lead to Alan suffering such a violent demise.
Now police consider a new motive. Did Nia find out about the other women Alan was messaging?
Is this a type of situation with a lover's scorn? Did she find out that Alan had been cheating on her behind her back and therefore gets revenge in this way?
Did Nia ask her brother Joshua to take care of Alan for her?
Or did Joshua find out what Alan had done to his sister and decide to take matters into his own hands?
Is Joshua the other man in the white SUV that picked up Alan that night?
Authorities are considering one more theory. Is it possible Daquana Bates had teamed up with Joshua Nickens and Larry Dennis to set a trap?
And Alan Moore walked right into it.
Suffolk County Police have reviewed video evidence that captured Daquana Bates's white SUV picking up Alan Moore on the night he was murdered. And they know she later met up with a red sedan, registered to Larry Dennis. As detectives work to piece together the timeline of events leading up to Alan's murder, they get an anonymous tip.
Joshua's running around town telling people about that he handled his business, that he took care of Alan.
Ironically, Joshua is the one who's talking. You know, criminals do that. Sometimes they have to brag, you know. And he's telling people that, you know, he had to set them straight.
Authorities obtain search warrants for Daquana's SUV, Larry's sedan, and the Dennis home. Among the potential evidence they recover at the residence are 2 electronic tablets, a mini computer, and a cell phone. Police also find 2 cell phones in Daquana's SUV. The cell phones prove to be the most telling. Now that authorities have the cell phone evidence, they track the movements of their suspects on the night of Alan's murder.
They were able to find the tower pings on the cell phones, which wind up indicating that these cell phones were at the scene of the crime, at the time indicated where Alan Moore was murdered.
They know that at some point in time, right, all of these people were together. We know that Daquana picks up Alan. We know Joshua's in the car. Larry joins Joshua and Daquana and Alan. But from that moment after, we have no idea what happens. They don't know exactly what happened at Wyandanch.
The cell phones become a very important piece of evidence, serving as a smoking gun in this case. One of the cell phones is registered to Daquana, and the other cell phone is registered to Alan.
Now, when they trace the cell phone towers and pings, they're able to determine that, everybody was together in Hempstead. And then 2 of them go to Wyandanch. And not only that, they met up in the exact same place where Alan is murdered, but one of them didn't return.
And authorities still don't know who killed Alan Moore. Investigators obtain arrest warrants, and on July 11, 2017, Joshua Nickens and Daquana Bates are taken into custody in Shirley, New York.
Once Joshua and Daquana were taken in custody, they were separated and they were questioned separately.
Joshua was very quiet. Police brought in some food and fed him, hoping that would make him a more cooperating witness. However, all he did was ask for his attorney.
Joshua had just been released from prison 6 months earlier, and now he's possibly facing another prison sentence. That had to be weighing on his mind.
Across the hall, Daquana is also proving to be uncooperative.
Daquana's likely thinking, we're in this all or nothing. And so she makes the decision that she's going to go 100% full force with Joshua and do this for him, right? And stay tight-lipped.
Aside from protecting her man, there's something else weighing on Daquana. She is several months pregnant with Joshua's baby.
She's just thinking about the life that's growing inside of her and how she cannot allow Joshua to go back to prison and not be a father to her child.
Later that same day, police arrest a 3rd suspect in Alan Moore's murder, Joshua's stepdad, Larry Dennis. But unlike Joshua and Daquana, Larry is more than willing to talk.
Larry Dennis, when he was arrested, told detectives plenty.
Larry tells police that Alan dated his stepdaughter, Nia Cleveland, in 2016, and that Alan frequently stayed at the Dennis home while Joshua was in jail. But Larry says in February of 2016, Alan took advantage of their generosity.
We find out that Alan stole a PlayStation from the home.
At some point, Joshua makes a call back home, and they're telling him about the fact that this guy, Alan, had the nerve to steal the PlayStation. This is how infuriating the parents were about this. Like, somebody coming into the home that they allowed in, they fed you, and you got the nerve to steal the PlayStation out of the house?
Sunetta, she feels hurt when she feels like this person who'd been in their home has betrayed them. And Josh is her son. He wants to do right by his mom, and she wants him to do what needs to be done.
He becomes very agitated. He takes this very personally. And so while he's in prison, he's already kind of making claims that, when he gets out, Alan is gonna pay.
Larry says when Joshua was released from prison in February 2017, he told Larry, Sunetta, and Daquana that they needed to get revenge on Alan, and they came up with a plan.
He told them of his involvement, and he told them that he was aware that Josh had gone too far, done more than what the plan was.
Larry says the plan was to rough up Alan for stealing the PlayStation and teach him a lesson about disrespecting people. But Joshua went overboard.
Larry didn't know what was going to happen either because he was easily led by those around him.
He, in his statement to law enforcement, notes that Joshua took things too far, that this wasn't their intention, but that Joshua has a tendency to do this, right? To take things too far.
Larry says he tried to stop his stepson, but he was out of control. Larry said he regretted his involvement in Alan's murder. As investigators had suspected, Alan Moore was killed in a revenge plot, but not for cheating on Nia Cleveland. It was over a video game. A few months later, on September 18th, Sunetta Dennis is arrested at a local restaurant. Like her husband, she gives a full confession about her involvement in Alan's murder.
It's interesting that the parents are the ones who ended up talking because they were the primary ones who were egging on this revenge plot, this teaching Alan a lesson. I think in all of this, no one anticipated that Joshua would take things to the level that it went. And so once it got that far, it's almost as if Larry and Sunetta had already decided that they're not going down for this.
Sunetta reiterates that the plan was to beat Alan up, not kill him. Sunetta says in the early morning hours of March 27th, Larry called and asked her to meet him, Joshua, and Daquana in West Hempstead. Then Sunetta returned home, where she waited for Larry to call her to pick him up. She says Daquana and Joshua returned home several hours later, at 7 a.m.
At that point, Daquana told her that Alan was dead and that Joshua strangled him. I don't think Sunetta thought it was gonna go that far. I honestly don't think any of them did. But by the time, it was no turning back.
Suffolk County Police have arrested 26-year-old Daquana Bates, 27-year-old Joshua Nickens, and 49-year-old Larry Dennis for the murder of Alan Moore. 43-year-old Sunetta Dennis, who has yet to be charged in connection with the murder, says her son Joshua killed Alan in a revenge plot gone awry. Eventually, Daquana also makes a full confession.
Daquana, along with Larry and Sunetta, said that Joshua came up with a plan to get Alan back for stealing his PlayStation and disrespecting the family, and that he asked her to help him along with the plan.
She had this family that she went home to, and they took care of her, and she took care of them, and she had an allegiance to that family because of that.
That allegiance drove Daquana to make a fateful decision. She says, at Joshua's request, she found Alan online and sent him a message.
Daquana lures Alan in through a Facebook message, posing as someone who wants to get to know him, says that, do they want to smoke or whatever.
Alan fell for the ruse and agreed to meet Daquana on the night of March 27th, 2017. Daquana says before arriving, they dropped Larry off on a side street.
Daquana picks him up at that apartment where he's staying at in West Hempstead at 2:13 a.m. and with Joshua in the car.
Daquana tells Alan that Joshua is her brother and that she needs to drop him off somewhere. And after that, they can go smoke weed.
Alan says, no problem, right? Doesn't see an issue with this.
From there, they drove to the location where Larry was waiting.
His specific role wasn't clear at the beginning, but it later emerged that he was a big guy, so he was sort of like the projected muscle. He was there for intimidation.
When Alan saw Larry, he became alarmed, sensing he was in danger.
Alan recognizes Larry. Knowing what he did, he jumps out of the car and starts running. Joshua and Larry catch up with Alan, you know, pistol whip him, get him back in the car, tie him up.
Daquana tells police that after a brief meeting with Sonetta, she, Joshua, and Larry drove around until they found an abandoned house in Wyandanch. Larry stayed in the car while she and Joshua took Alan into the basement.
Daquana's thinking that we're just gonna beat him up, teach him a lesson, teach him not to disrespect our home, and then we're gonna leave him there.
Once in the basement, Daquana says she kicked Alan.
Daquana had signed up for a beating. She was fine with kicking him, she was fine with hitting him. It became something more than that.
At some point, Daquana gets concerned. She watches Joshua start to choke Alan and continue to choke Alan to the point where he's losing breath, he's losing consciousness.
Josh had a ligature around Alan's neck, and he was strangled to death in front of her eyes.
There's a lot of things going through Daquana's head, I'm sure, trying to figure out what exactly did she wrap herself into. Daquana almost has to make a decision on the spot, right? What am I gonna do? And so in this moment, she's thinking, we're a family, and so we're gonna deal with this together.
Daquana says they stripped Alan's clothes, collected his belongings, and returned home. That's when Joshua realized he lost something that could tie him back to the murder.
Joshua realizes that he loses his phone, and Sonetta goes back to where they met up with each other before to see if they can find Josh's phone somewhere on the floor.
But the phone is never recovered. Daquana says later that day, they burned Alan's clothes and belongings. On March 1st, 2019, authorities had enough to charge Joshua Nickens.
We took a plea deal. You know, he pled guilty to murder in the first degree, 2 counts of murder in the second degree, and 1 count of kidnapping in the first degree. You know, he was sentenced to 20 years to life.
At the sentencing hearing, Suffolk County District Attorney Timothy D. Sini said he believed Joshua got what he deserved.
The district attorney said that Alan's murder was a heinous act that was fueled by revenge. Kill somebody for suspecting that they stole a video game, that's just incomprehensible.
Sonetta Dennis was charged with murder in the second degree, and Larry Dennis was charged with murder in the second degree and kidnapping in the first degree. Daquana Bates was charged with murder in the second degree and kidnapping in the first degree.
Daquana eventually took a deal, resulting in her plea to a lesser charge of manslaughter, and as a result, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Nia Cleveland was cleared of any wrongdoing in Alan's murder. The people responsible for his senseless
to be a representation of what any woman would want in a man, right? Somebody who's going to protect you at all costs, somebody who's going to provide for you. And so for Women who don't have that, who don't come from those backgrounds, ending up in such unhealthy relationships and having to make difficult decisions.
Said that if you love someone, let them go.
He had the perm, he had hip-hop, bravado, but also his own set of weird idiosyncrasies that made him stand out.
If they come back again, they're yours to keep.
She made this huge commitment by leaving her life behind and coming to New York. The lustful relationship that they had, it was exciting. It was moving really quickly.
But what if you aren't the only lover they've lured in?
She was hurt, she was heartbroken, but she also felt like, you know what? I just have to do something else to get his attention.
And the sting of jealousy is so severe, you could kill.
Just imagine how police have now potentially encountered somebody who may be a danger to people.
They see a person lying face down on the ground with blood coming from his head. His whole life flashed before his eyes, and he just threw up right there on the scene.
September 22nd, 2006, Fort Lee, New Jersey. It's a chilly Friday night in this commuter neighborhood just outside of New York City.
Fort Lee, New Jersey. It's at the foot of the George Washington Bridge, and it has a lot of restaurants. It has a lot of local spas and eateries for people to just enjoy themselves when they're coming home from work or if they want to hang out on the weekend. And it's literally right there, beautiful views across the Hudson River, looking at New York City.
It is generally a safe place with a very effective police department. But like any community, it has the proximity and the opportunity where somebody who wants to do something bad can find the place to do it.
At approximately 4:40 p.m., the Fort Lee Police Department receives a panicked call from the front desk attendant.
A desk person who's working wee hours of the morning calls the 911 to the Fort Lee Police to say that there's been a shooting.
They're doing their regular shift, and all of a sudden, this man comes downstairs saying to call 911 because someone got shot in room 408.
But before the front desk clerk could gather any more details, the man took off.
The front desk clerk assumed the person ran back up to that room. In his frantic mode, he left the tape on the front desk counter.
The clerk says that he was hesitant to follow him, but he didn't feel much safer in the lobby of the hotel either.
Possible person who was either involved in it or is a victim of the shooting is still in the facility because the front desk clerk said nobody left through the front door.
The 911 operator tells the clerk to stay put and wait for the police because they are on the way.
The Fort Lee Police Department is approximately 3/4 of a mile or a mile away from this location. I dare say they were there very, very quickly.
The police are trying to keep the clerk calm. They ask him if he can tell them anything about the man that's staying in room 408.
The clerk says all he knows is that the room is registered to a man named Alan Plowden. Alan Plowden and David Taylor, both Florida natives, carved a complex mortgage and mail fraud scheme, manipulated the financial system to siphon off massive sums of money, crafting a life of luxury from ill-gotten gains.
So David and Alan knew each other going back for many years. They lived in and scammed people in Miami and Atlanta.
David and Alan's criminal partnership spanned many years, thriving in the shadows in the vibrant scenes of Miami and Atlanta, where they perfected their craft and deception and lived off the riches of their elaborate schemes. Their operation amassed a fortune, peaking with a staggering $1.4 million from a single fraudulent transaction.
David was in New York with bags of money, literally, and he was looking to have that type of lifestyle in the New York City scene.
As the cash flowed, their descent into the criminal abyss deepened, setting the stage for a tragic chain of events. The moment they arrive, Fort Lee police head straight for Alan Plowden's room, number 408. but not without putting a careful plan in play first.
The officers are walking into this scene as if there is an active shooter on site. So they have their guns drawn already, and they're making their way up to the 4th floor.
They get to the 4th floor without a problem, but as soon as they were approaching room 408, they were surprised by a man who was running out the room shirtless.
Rather than the person come towards them, he runs and goes back into a room. Police have now potentially encountered somebody who may be a danger to people in the hotel, to the police, to people who otherwise might be in the room. They're on high alert.
So now they're bringing out more tactic equipment, the shields, the battering ram, and they're making their way closer to that front door. And when they get there, they're trying to talk to the people who are on the other side, but they really couldn't make out who was speaking towards them.
Officers place a call to room 408. To their surprise, a woman answers the phone.
She identifies herself as Jennifer Nettles, and at that point, police are thinking this might be a hostage situation.
She's mentioned that somebody has been shot. She mentions the word gun. Police at that point don't know if the gunman or the gun person is in the room, don't know if there's a gun, and don't know if she herself is in some sort of jeopardy.
Eventually, she explains that it's herself in the room, the gentleman that the officer saw go back inside the room, Alan Plowden, and then there's a person who was shot that's on the floor, David Taylor, who's friends with Alan Plowden.
Now, of course, hearing that somebody is injured inside the room, police are hoping that they can get in there and, do something to save this individual. But in order to do that, they have to get inside the room.
Police have to make instant judgments as to what they do. Are they walking into a trap, or in fact, are they going in to relieve and help people who otherwise might be victims of a crime?
Fort Lee police have been called to a local Holiday Inn, where a man has reportedly been shot inside room 408. But with no idea where the gunman could be now, officers must handle the situation with extreme caution.
So their first concern is safety, okay? Are they themselves safe? They know there's been some sort of a shooting. They want to make sure that they themselves are not walking into a trap.
Although Jennifer is telling the negotiator that the people in the room are who they are, the officers really truly don't know if this is true.
They also have a duty. And if somebody is shot inside the room, they're gonna need medical attention. And with an injury like that, every second counts.
So they're talking to her and they're explaining to her to relay information to Alan for him to step out. And as soon as he steps out, he had a backpack on his back and wearing shorts. The officers then handcuffed him, put him on the ground. They check him for any weapons that are possibly on him.
And it seems that his appearance in that less than full garb can assure them that he doesn't have a gun in a pocket and a jacket in some way secreted from them.
Still, he does have a backpack. When police search the bag, they don't find a weapon, but potentially a motive. It's a scenario that would certainly make sense, given the hotel's location.
Between here and the George Washington Bridge into Upper Manhattan and to further up through New England is a major drug corridor. To the George Washington Bridge, probably the most traveled bridge in the United States. Several different roadways, including Route 95, the main corridor between north and south in the United States along the eastern seaboard, and Route 80, which basically starts a mile or two from here, will take you all the way to California. That proximity is good for tourists, but it also gives access to those who think ill, who can use these locations for criminality. Lo and behold, the mystery continues by opening the bag, and now you find $30,000. It's not what's usually in a person's backpack. It's cash, it's a big amount. There must be a drug deal that has had to have gone down or didn't go on or went bad.
But if this was a drug deal gone wrong, police are left wondering what the woman, Jennifer, had to do with it.
Jennifer comes out and she only has her underwear on.
The obvious might be that there might be some trade that has been going on in that particular, whether simply for frivolity, for fun, or for money.
The officers check her, obviously, for any other types of weapons, and they also handcuff her as well.
Alan and Jennifer are transported to a police cruiser downstairs to await further questioning. Meanwhile, police go searching for their room's third occupant, the shooting victim, David Taylor.
Officers then enter in the hotel room in room 408, and they see a person lying face down on the ground with blood coming from his head.
Clearly, when they see the individual, while they're sympathetic and hopeful that the person may still be able to be rendered medical attention, it becomes clear from the blood, from the failure to move, from a touch, that the person has been shot and killed.
The room itself looked like it was ransacked, like there might have been some type of scuffle. The sheets are out of place. The mattress is flipped over. There's a shirt that's torn apart. There was just clearly something that happened here prior to the shooting.
The man doesn't have any ID on him. He appears to be wearing pajamas, but what he does have on him is a key card to a room on the second floor.
They find out that David was actually also a guest in the hotel as well and was staying on the second floor. So the officers go down to the second floor hotel room.
They go in a room and they find a startled young lady wondering what has occurred. Here comes the next puzzle piece. What is she doing in the room?
The woman's name is Mercedes Cantu. She tells police she was called up earlier that night by the shooting victim, David Taylor, who was visiting from Miami for the week.
While David was up here in New York, David had called Mercedes to hang out, go shopping, to just chill. And he told Mercedes that he had a friend in town, Alan Plowden, and he wanted to know if she had any friends for the both of them to hang out with. Mercedes then told David about her friend Jennifer Nettles. They both were sex workers.
There was a night of enjoyment, entertainment.
As the night goes on, they go to their own separate quarters. They have hotel rooms set up for them, David on the second floor, Alan on the fourth floor.
But not long after Mercedes and David got back to the room, David gets a text message, and he tells Mercedes that he has to, go check on something in room 408. That was the last time that Mercedes saw David.
Police bring Jennifer Nettles and Alan Plowden into the station for questioning.
Police have to find out what's going on. They have to be able to speak to people who will provide them information, both as evidence and a lead to where the suspect or suspects may in fact be.
They are really honing in on Jennifer's account because she was in the room where David was shot.
What they'll do is, of course, they'll separate the people so you can get their whole version of what happened.
Jennifer's story starts off a lot like Mercedes' story. They were headed out for a night on the town, and then when they came back to the hotel, they each went off to their own rooms.
Jennifer says that after they were in the hotel room and they were sleeping, Alan gets 2 phone calls.
That's when the night took a dangerous turn.
She gets up to go to the bathroom. It's the middle of the night, and there's a knock on the door. When she goes to answer the door, there's a man and a woman on the other side.
The unexpected visitors tell Jennifer they're there to see a man named Jay. Convinced they have the wrong room, Jennifer tries to close the door.
The woman on the other side puts her foot in the middle of the door to prevent it from closing, and then the gentleman on the other side has a handgun that's pointing in her face.
You see this instrument of death right in front of you. So now, what might have been the uncertainty or surprise that somebody's got a foot in their door has now quadrupled in terms of fear factor.
So she lets the door open, and as they walk inside, Jennifer gets shoved into the bathroom with that woman. And that woman starts to duct tape her mouth, her hands. She bounds her to keep quiet, and she threatens her before leaving the bathroom and going into the room itself. All she can hear on the other side of the door is scuffling and noise and rustling and Jennifer starts to take note of the tone of voices that she's hearing through the walls, and it seemed like the woman knew Alan.
Fort Lee police are meeting with Jennifer Nettles, a witness to the hotel shooting of David Taylor. Jennifer claims she was trapped and bound with duct tape in the bathroom of his friend Alan's hotel room after the two suspects barged in.
Can you imagine the fear in Jennifer? Now, she's just listening to what's going on. Alan is in the middle of it with a gun in his face.
And then a gun goes off, and people leave the hotel room. What Jennifer's hearing through the wall is not exactly going to help in the investigation. They want to hear more of what happened when they interacted with Alan.
Across the hall, police sit down with the second hotel witness, Alan Plowden.
Alan tells investigators that he was sleeping while Jennifer was in the bathroom and all the other commotion was going on.
When he finally does wake up, Alan confirms Jennifer's hunch. He hears the voice of a woman that he recognizes.
He recognizes this voice, somebody he has had a relationship with, who he has spent time with, and who he has spoken to. It's somebody he knows as Gina Conway.
Gina Conway was a 29-year-old exotic dancer who grew up in North Carolina's Piedmont region.
She also had ties in Baltimore County, Maryland. Her mom lived in Baltimore, remarried, and her family was still living in North Carolina. So she went back and forth a lot between those two cities. In the early 2000s, Gina would mostly spend her time in North Carolina, not only because of family, but she had a boyfriend of 10 years that still lived back home. So she was really there a lot. And during that time, hip-hop was coming through with some new flavor, and she was into, and so was her boyfriend, a group called Dipset.
Dipset, which the sort of core group is Cameron, Jim Jones, Joel Santana, and then, you have a lot of other Hell Rel, J.R. Ryder, Freaky Zeke.
And there was a lot of people that was in this crew that they were able to make a lot of hit records that are still known to this day.
When Gina learned that Dipset was coming through town, she jumped at the chance to get concert tickets with her boyfriend. After the show, she managed to get them invited backstage.
Gina's that kind of person that she doesn't have a hard time getting along with people. She has that charisma. She's able to talk her way into any kind of door. So while Gina was backstage with her boyfriend, she happens to meet one of those entourage members, Charlie Wingate, AKA Max Bigavelli, AKA Max B.
Max B had that same mix of sort of classic New York hip hop, bravado, but also his own set of weird idiosyncrasies that made him stand out. He had the perm, he had sort of straight up R&B songs. He's a charming guy. Every project he's released in his career has at least a few love songs. He's always talked about sort of emotional vulnerability being the hallmark of the music he makes, and a lot of that is very flirtatious and romantic.
Max B giving her any type of attention really did intrigue her to the point where she might have forgot she was there with her boyfriend. After the concert, Max B and Gina exchanged phone numbers.
After weeks of exchanging texts and calls, Gina was finally ready to ditch her life in North Carolina for a future with this alluring new man.
So Gina comes up to New York, and she's living with Charlie in his apartment. He's in the studio, he's doing shows at night, he's touring, and Gina's working as an exotic dancer at the Sin City nightclub. The lustful relationship that Gina and Max had, it was exciting. It was moving really quickly.
But a relationship with the rising hip-hop artist also came with a lot of heartache.
2 months after Max and Gina realize that this relationship isn't working and Gina moves back home, Max starts blowing her phone up. Baby, come back kind of conversations.
She came back to New York, and there was some controversy around his having impregnated a woman.
Obviously, Gina's gonna be pissed. why are you wooing me? Why are you trying to make me feel like I'm the only woman when you have a whole situation and a whole baby on the way? So while Gina's trying to figure out everything, thankfully, she gets her job back at Sin City. She was hurt, she was heartbroken, but she also felt like, you know what? If he cared about me enough to bring me back here after I left already, then I just have to do something else to get his attention. Days prior to the robbery, she saw David and she saw Alan at the club and hung out with them, and they wanted to hang out with her because she just had a way with them.
In the last few days, Alan and David had enjoyed several more outings with Gina.
They went out after that first meetup and hung out where they went shopping at a mall in Bergen County, bought a lot of expensive stuff, and she had a great time with them, and they had a great time with her. And they wanted to hang out with her even more times after that.
But never would Alan have thought the next time he saw Gina, she'd be robbing him.
Alan tells investigators he's thinking he might be dreaming because he's hearing Gina's voice in this hotel room. But when he opens his eyes, he has a gun in his face. And a man who's holding the gun, he doesn't recognize him, but he also notices that the gunman has this scar on his cheek. The guy with the gun is asking him, where's the money at? And he's like, what money? He gets hit in the face. Gina's starting to tie him up with the tape that she used to tie up Jennifer, puts the duct tape around his face, his mouth, his eyes, his hands, and they keep asking him, where's the money? He tells them that he has $700 underneath the mattress. So they flip the mattress and they're still telling him that, where's the rest of the money?
It's a dynamic situation. And what must be going through his head is he's trying to figure out, somebody knows there's money here. Who would know?
Based on what Alan is telling law enforcement, he had all the money that he knew these robbers were looking for, but Alan knew that he needed to hide his valuables even before this whole situation happened because he has a strange woman in his room.
Still, Alan knew that these robbers weren't leaving until they got what they wanted. So he told them that the money was hidden away in his friend's room.
So the gunman tells him, call your friend.
He gets on the phone with David, who's on the second floor, and tells David in a weird way that he is in trouble, but he needs him to come upstairs.
David coming upstairs may just simply think that it's a physical confrontation, fist on fist, mano a mano. You don't bring fists to a gunfight. And what happens is he now is confronted by and sees the presence of a gun.
And as soon as the door opens, the gunman and David, they start to scuffle. Alan is laying on the ground. He tells investigators that his friend David and this gunman scuffle, and his friend gets shot in the head. The guy and Gina are grabbing whatever that they can find in the room, and then they leave the hotel room. Alan tells investigators that after the gunman and Gina left the hotel room, he goes to Jennifer in the bathroom to get her out of her own restraints.
Alan then ran downstairs to try to catch Gina and her accomplice before they could get away.
They leave the hotel room. Alan tells investigators that after the gunman and Gina left the hotel room, he goes to Jennifer in the bathroom to get her out of her own restraints.
Alan then ran downstairs to try to catch Gina and her accomplice before they could get away.
But he actually catches up with Gina and he hits her. She somehow gets away from him and darts out of the hotel. The guy she came with was already in the taxi cab and they took off.
Gina knows that Alan can recognize her from the crime scene, so she probably wants to get as far away from the crime scene as possible. So now you have a suspect on the run and no idea how to find her.
A survivor of a Fort Lee hotel robbery turned murder has just identified a viable suspect in the case. But so far, police have no leads on where 29-year-old Gina Conway could have fled from there.
As investigators are trying to figure out where's Gina, who she was with in this cab, developments start to come in.
Hotels were among the first places to really have cameras because they have to protect themselves from their own liability, stuff happening at a hotel.
They weren't everywhere as you see it these days. So the police were able to at least get the license plate and the cab numbers that were called to chauffeur Gina and whoever else around that night. And they were able to track down the cab driver.
Investigators asked the cab driver what he remembers from the night he drove Gina and her companion to the hotel.
You find the cab driver. You find the cab driver's location. You find the log that he might have. And with that, now you've got names.
The driver tells them that he picked up Kelvin Leardom, and that person told him where to go. It was different locations. They stopped at a gas station and ended up at different Holiday Inn locations until they found the right one on Route 4.
He says that when they finally got to the right hotel, they asked him to wait for them. And Gina said, they'd only be a few minutes.
The cabbie said that he wound up waiting about an hour, and when they emerged from the hotel, the guy had changed his clothes, and they were both carrying bags. The man gave him an address back in Harlem, and that's where he dropped both of the passengers off.
So now investigators have Gina Conway, and they have Kelvin Leardom, who are the two people inside the taxi cab that was driving around.
But when police trace the Harlem address back to a public basketball court, it seems like a dead end, until they realize the address is just blocks from another location that's come up in their investigation.
Police then start doing more investigating, and they find the Sin City address to where Gina was working.
Police drop in on the club where Alan Plowden told them he met Gina just a few days earlier. It's there they uncover another valuable clue.
Now, police are looking through her records from the club, and they find that she's listed an unknown address as her place of residence. This isn't the hotel address. It isn't a family address. I mean, it's not even her ex-boyfriend Max B's address. But it does turn out to be the address of a coworker, Turon Golston.
According to co-workers, Turon is a bouncer for the club. Gina saw him like a big brother, someone she could confide in, someone who would protect her.
Police immediately head for Turon's address with a warrant in hand. But when they arrive, there's no sign of Gina, but there's plenty more of interest.
They found a lot of things that were taken out of the hotel. They found Alan's cell phone inside of Turon's apartment, so they got a subpoena for that.
The police also find Alan's clothes and laptop in Turon's apartment.
Can you imagine the surprise when Mr. Golston is told by the police that evidence taken from the scene of a murder is now found in his house, that he seemingly had nothing to do with? Of course, he's going to say where he got it. Gina brought it over to him.
Turon doesn't seem to have any information about the items that are in his house. And he's missing one key piece of evidence attributed to the shooter, a scar on his cheek. It was clear that Gina had been here recently. Now police just needed to wait for her to come back.
Shooting death of David Taylor inside a local hotel. But 6 days after the crime, Gina Conway and her accomplice remain in the wind.
They're looking for her because now we have a suspect on the loose, if you will.
Law enforcement can get a communications data warrant to pinpoint where somebody might have been at a given hour at a given time. So for example, if the phone pings for a location in Fort Lee at 4 o'clock in the morning on the date in question, you got the phone there.
Armed with Gina's phone number from her personnel file, police are able to trace her mobile device to a location in Harlem.
And they do pick her up not too far away at a subway station in Harlem.
She was living life on the run for a period of time. Life on the run because she was either witness or participating in something serious or something that she might have thought was far different than what she had originally planned to do.
But by the time police bring her back to the station, Gina is ready to come clean.
She gets into the precinct, and investigators are kind of shocked because she's just willing to tell them anything. She didn't ask for a lawyer, and she just starts talking.
Gina tells police that it all started when she found out her boyfriend was having a baby with another woman.
It's one of those things that you're like, okay, I'm here. What do I need to do to make sure that he knows that I should be the only person he's focusing all his time and energy on? And Gina is just in fight or flight mode. She's just trying to figure it out while also her feelings are hurt.
So I think it's logical that she, I think, maybe wanted to make him a little bit jealous.
As the investigators are talking to Gina, she tells them she told her boyfriend Max B about the shopping spree that she went on with David and Alan. She was bragging to Max to make him jealous, to show that other men are showing her attention. Two big ballers who are taking her shopping. She thought this was going to entice him to say, let me step up and be a better boyfriend to her.
It has an opposite effect. He sees it potentially as opportunity. We'll go get him. We'll see if we can make a fast rip, get the money from what sounds to me that Wingate thought was an easy mark.
The jealous boyfriend, Max B, is coming up with this whole plan to rob these two dudes who just took his girlfriend out and showed her a good time. And at that moment, Gina doesn't stop him from this plan, according to what she's telling the investigators. She kind of leans into it like, wow, he's including me in something that we can do together.
With Max B's encouragement, Gina makes a date with David and Alan on the morning of September 22nd.
They had a fun outing, but David and Alan had to cut things short with Gina because they were getting ready to hang out with Jennifer and Mercedes. So as she prepared to head out, Gina asked to borrow Alan's room key to use the restroom before she left. Then she walked out of the hotel without returning the key.
Gina tells investigators that they all met at the park to really plot out this plan. It was herself, Max B, as well as Kelvin, his stepbrother. Gina had that room key to get access to Alan's room where the money, she believed, was. And she also knew that Alan was going to be out with David at a nightclub with these two young ladies. So if once they get in the room, they can clean it up, get out. They won't even know it was Gina or anybody involved with getting into their room. And as they're being sent off that night in the taxi cab that Max calls to have this whole thing happen, he tells Gina in a reassuring manner that if you do this, you're my girl, you're the one. Almost like a proposal in some kind of way. And she knew she had to make this plan work in order for her to get that goal.
But when they arrive that night, Gina says things didn't go according to plan.
When Gina got to the hotel, she went to room 408 and the room key didn't work. Unbeknownst to her, Alan had to change in the room keys earlier that day because it just didn't work for him. So she decided to knock at the door, and that's when Jennifer answered.
She starts to tell that, in fact, what she thought that there would be a ripoff of these people now evolved into something far, far more dangerous.
Up until that point, Gina's feeling kind of angsty because they're not finding the right hotel, the room key isn't working, and as that's happening, she sees that Kelvin has a gun and duct tape on him. It's not a part of the plan.
Kelvin holds the gun up to Alan's head and demands the money. That's when Alan offers them the $700 hidden under his mattress.
Gina's aware that he has a suitcase or a book bag that he walks around with a lot of money. And he's still saying, I don't have the money, but then he says that his friend downstairs has it.
By this point, they had already come too far, and Gina felt like she couldn't back down. She tried to focus on the plan of getting the room key from David so that they can go down to the second floor to get the money. But then the shot was fired as she watched her new friend David fall dead to the ground. They ran, headed for the second floor as fast as they could, but they did not count on Alan breaking free and running after them. As he followed them into the hall, they had no choice but to abort the mission.
Gina tells investigators that she took the $700 over to Charlie's sister-in-law's house, and while they were there, he had promised her that he would take care of her and that he was sorry about what happened.
As police sit across from the tearful suspect, they can see that Gina is sorry too. Nevertheless, on this day, Gina was charged with manslaughter.
That's when police offered Gina a deal. Turn in your accomplices and we'll make things easier for you. But Gina had already done so much for Max B. Was she really capable of turning against him and his stepbrother?
Gina Conway has just confessed to her part in the robbery and murder of David Taylor inside a Fort Lee hotel room. Now, police are eager to get her boyfriend Max B and his stepbrother, Kelvin Leerdam, also behind bars.
They subpoena everybody's cell phone that they have a suspicion of being a part of this crime, Kelvin's especially as well. And so at that point, the police are putting 2 and 2 together. Cell phone towers are pinging. It shows that Gina, Kelvin, and Max and the taxi cab driver were at that gas station at the time that she said they were. And it also shows that Alan, Gina were at the hotel with Kelvin all at the same time when the robbery did occur.
Coupled with Alan Plowden's statement about the shooter having a scar, police are able to arrest Kelvin Leerdam.
Police then apprehend Charlie Wingate, and he's charged with murder. And when they talk to him, he's not giving them anything. He's tight-lipped, doesn't even say that he knows anybody involved in this case.
Without anything directly tying Max B to the crime scene, police know his conviction hinges on Gina's cooperation.
It's a homicide, it's a robbery, it's a felony murder. Those type of ties, once you are acting in concert, you can equally get the same amount as somebody who pulled the trigger. Kelvin and Max B were facing life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Cooperators, people who were involved in the crime, who ultimately agree to testify on behalf of the state. The strength or the weakness of that witness is often measured. Gina's story matched Plowden's story, matched Jennifer's story, without them being any connection really between them that would lend to them telling and making up a story together.
Because Gina was able to dime out her boyfriend and Kelvin, who was the shooter in this whole entire case, she was able to negotiate a lesser sentence of only 15 years flat.
On June 9, 2009, Max B and Kelvin Leerdam are found guilty of felony murder, armed robbery, and conspiracy.
They were convicted of each and every one of the crimes, which included weapons, which included a kidnapping that they factored, or a coercion that they held them in. A judge could very well, and did in this set of circumstances, sentence them consistent with their roles. Gina was a facilitator. Wingate was the mastermind, but the greatest damage was done by the shooter.
Kelvin received a maximum life sentence, and Max B was sentenced to a very extensive sentence of over 50 years.
Almost immediately, the verdict against Max B ignites an uproar in the hip-hop community.
People are looking at it as, oh, this man's entire life, so that naturally sent shockwaves within hip-hop. There was also a perception that the severity of his sentence was not, to some people, reflective of his level of involvement in the crime in question.
There's this whole Free Max B movement that has percolated after he was sentenced, and it's continued throughout the years.
The movement has led to moderate successes.
Kelvin tried his attempt to get a reduced sentence. That didn't work. Gina tried to get her sentence reduced, even though she already had a negotiated plea. That was rejected as well. Max B was the only person whose post-conviction review ended where there was a reduced sentence.
Max B gets his conviction lowered to 20 years. He is set to be released in 2025.
When he got his sentence reduced, hip-hop fans of his and others felt there's going to be a future of Max B to come as soon as he gets out.
He's released music through a few different sort of smaller independent labels. He doesn't talk a ton about exactly how he records the music, the new music. There's lots of rappers who, while incarcerated, have recorded songs over a phone in prison, and it's not clear if that's what Max is doing. He doesn't really address the case that explicitly. He's done a lot of love songs. He's maintained his innocence maintained sort of a positive outlook on when I get out, things are gonna be great.
Gina thought that he really wanted to be with her, but his intentions, as she saw that first day, were not genuine. I wish that Gina packed her bags and went back home to where her family was and tried to win back that gentleman that was with her for 10 years so that she could have had a different outcome at life. Unfortunately, she wasted 15 years behind bars because of a man that she thought was for her. And she did all this for her man that was not ever really her man.
A firm grasp is good when you're climbing a mountain or shaking hands with a stranger. But trying to hold onto a love that is slipping away will only send you both crashing over the edge. Special as falling in love for the very first time.
That bond was magical. I really never seen my sister be that comfortable with anybody else besides him.
She would talk about him. You could tell that she loved him.
But no love or person is perfect.
We may love a person, but we see their imperfections, and most people can't help but try to fix them.
She would say, well, at least if I help him, he'll be a better person and stuff, because he's a good-hearted person, Mama.
She tried to save him by literally taking him up out of it.
What happens when that person pushes back?
No one likes to be told what to do, so sometimes there are feelings of anger and resentment, and those emotions can bubble over.
And when that happens, there can be disastrous consequences for everyone involved.
A lot of police still out here trying to figure out what happened. What we do know right now, 4 people were shot, 2 are dead. Their bodies are actually still out here as police work this scene. May 17th, 2012, Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville is a beautiful place to me. There's a lot of wonderful people, but at the same time, like many cities across the United States, it has its challenges.
I think there's a lot of disparities in Louisville. We still have a very segregated city in the fact that the West End and the East End have very different demographics, and I think that impacts things.
For many years, we have struggled with the violent crime issues here.
32nd and Greenwood is a place that there are, unfortunately, shootings on a regular basis.
And this day is no different. Shortly after 1 p.m., gunfire erupts.
911, I've heard you, Johnson. What's your emergency?
Location of the emergency.
Someone's been shot. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky on 26th.
Okay, is it a shooting, ma'am?
Not breathing.
Okay, ma'am.
911 is flooded with calls reporting a shootout.
Numerous police officers are dispatched to the corner of 32nd Street and Garland. When they arrive, they find multiple victims, 2 who appear to be deceased. They really don't know who the victims are and what happened, so they set up a perimeter and begin the investigation.
Police scanners are quickly filled with reports of the shooting, attracting the attention of reporters, including Jamie Weiss.
I, on that day, was actually working on a different story. We weren't having much luck. So when the call came out on the scanners about a shooting, we were the crew that was assigned to go to that scene and find out what was going on. I think they may have told me that there were several people involved, but outside of that, when you hear shooting, you go and you don't really ask any more questions until you get there and figure out what's going on.
When Jamie arrives on the scene, she is startled by the number of bystanders.
There were a lot of people out. It almost seemed like a large majority of the neighborhood was out there, and it was of every age. There were children out there, there were adults out there, a large crowd, which was really unusual.
After talking to police officers, Jamie goes live to report numerous victims.
We actually just spoke with police, Dawn, to try and clarify exactly what happened. Let me show you the scene here. 32nd between Greenwood Avenue and Kentucky. A lot of police still out here trying to figure out what happened. What we do know right now, 4 people were shot at.
Towards the end of that live report, There was a woman who had shown up, and she was very emotional. She was making a lot of noise. I referenced that in my report. I was not able to make out what she was saying. I honestly was focused on doing my report and blocking that out, honestly, because it was so loud. But I know that she was being held back by somebody else and kind of waving her hands in the air. We went off the air. We were recording right in front of our truck, so we were only a few steps away from it. The woman that had been screaming stopped screaming, as far as I was aware, and we couldn't see her anymore.
Jamie and her cameraman reached their truck and prepared to record some video of the scene.
The photographer I was working with was getting his camera ready to shoot video, and the next thing I heard were some pops.
Startled, she gathers her senses and jumps into the back of the van for cover.
I was terrified when I realized they were shots. I didn't know where they were coming from. I didn't know if bullets were gonna come through the van. I looked up and there were police running past the doors of our truck that were open with their guns drawn. It was complete chaos. We did not feel safe. We didn't know what was going on. So I could see people in the field next to us getting down on the ground, and there were police officers screaming.
Jamie quickly shifts back into reporter mode and chases down witnesses and police officers. She learns the shooting is connected to the woman who was screaming during her news report.
We saw her while we were live.
It's just a horrific tragedy for the community. 6 people shot in one day. And police have no idea what in the world is going on. Who are the victims and why have they been shot?
Two shootings in the same Louisville neighborhood, less than 90 minutes apart, have police perplexed and residents stunned.
Police are still processing one scene, trying to find out who the victims are and who shot who, when another shooting breaks out. And everyone is wondering, are the shootings connected, or is it just a random act of violence?
When you look at that footage, and I did, and others have, it's beyond heartbreaking, because you knew media was down there. You knew law enforcement was down there. And it's the unthinkable that happened, to be quite frank with you, that you couldn't imagine that that could occur in that fashion.
Relatives of the victims quickly hear about the shootings. For Jacqueline Goldsmith, it's a call no mother wants to get.
That day, May 17th, 2012, I see my girlfriend in the store. She's at the store too, and we're talking. And I get the call that something's went down on 32nd with Chitara, and we left. The next thing I know is I call my husband and tell him what's going on.
Desperate to learn what has happened to her 24-year-old daughter, Chitara, Jackie and her friend race to the emergency room.
You know, as we're driving to the hospital, I'm telling my girlfriend, my baby might be dead and all of that. And she says, oh, you don't know that yet, Jackie. We got to get to the hospital.
But at the hospital, no one will tell Jackie what has happened.
They wouldn't give me no information for a while. They wouldn't let me see her or anything. It was rough. And all I could think about was, is my daughter alive? Is she going to make it?
Chitara Goldsmith was born in 1994 in Dayton, Ohio, the youngest of Jacqueline Goldsmith's 3 children.
I was 18 when I met Chitara's father. I was living in Dayton with my auntie, Joyce. Chitara's father and I, we ended up moving to the projects in Dayton because that was the place that we could afford to live, you know. So after a few years, my husband got involved with a bunch of stuff that was going on out there, and so it wasn't a good environment for my children. So I left my husband and brought them back here to Louisville, Kentucky.
Chitara's childhood was a happy one, and her church family played a central role.
She used to love the church. And when she was a little girl, she used to sing in the choir and stuff. I think of things like that when she was really happy.
When we was young, my sister used to be what they call a sunbeam. That's how she started out. She started out with a little bitty kid that was singing. Then she graduated to the choir. any kind of program that could get us outside of the hood, my mother pushed us toward it.
I was a single parent, and I was raising Chitara, Morris, and Christopher by myself. Being that I'm a nurse, I used to work second and third shift, and my roommate would stay at home and watch my kids. But, you know, you don't make a lot of money, so you have to live where you can afford to live.
Like many residents of poor neighborhoods, Jackie's children had a front row seat to crime and violence.
When my daughter Chitara and my son Morris were little, they were at home. They were looking out the window and they saw some terrible things which would affect anybody.
So me and my sister, we were about, I have to say, about 5 or 6 years old. She used to sit out and just watch them people. She used to watch them play dice. And there was an incident one night. I'm laying in the bed. My sister comes and I was asleep. She wakes me up. Brother, come here. I come to the window and she's like, somebody just got shot. So me and her sit in the window and we literally looking out the window, peeping down, and I can see the guy laid out. I really think that impacted her very negatively. I think it like stifled her vision of the world, seeing somebody get taken so easily and her being so young. It changes how you look at things. That was a very pivotal moment because I think that's the moment where she changed, where her outlook on life, period, changed.
Despite her early brushes with violence, Chitara was determined to make the most out of her life.
Chitara attended Jefferson Community College. I think she was going for business administration. She had a job at Kroger's. She was in the bakery.
In early 2012, Chitara began dating 22-year-old Craig Bland Jr.
He was a nice little young man. She brought him to the house. He was very respectful and everything.
The first time I met Craig, it was on Christmas. It was on a Christmas day, and my sister called us and stuff. She's telling us like, yeah, I'm bringing my boyfriend through, right? So we like, man, who is this guy? You know what I'm saying? He had a quiet demeanor, but I didn't feel any bad vibes from him. He was just chill. We ended up eating and chilling. Man, it was a good day. He was a good guy.
Chitara told me that she liked him and she was trying to help Craig because, you know, he didn't have no mother and father. So that's what drew Chitara to Craig.
Like many in the neighborhood, Craig had witnessed more than his share of violent crimes, including one incident when he was 15 years old.
What happened was CJ was going to school one day. He called his cousin BG. BG was somebody from down in the hood. They pulled up to the shorties on 34th, around 34th Street in the West End, and he ended up getting shot. CJ witnessed who did it, and he was young at the time. He ended up having to go to court over it, and he ended up getting on the stand and telling on who the guy was. So of course, you know, that gets you labeled a snitch in the streets. Everybody turned against him. It messed him up and it was really impactful for him, man. Changed dude's life, man. I think about that a lot. No one's gonna accept you doing things the right way. What other way is there to do it? And he was kind of forced into it at a young age. We're talking 14, 15 years old, forced into it.
The shared experience of witnessing a murder strengthened the bond between Craig and Chitara.
I feel like she feel like, hey, I feel your pain. I know where you're coming from. Not sympathizing with him, but empathizing with him. I feel you. I think that was one of the major factors of why she tried so much, because she didn't want to just save him for him. She wanted to save him for her too, for both of them.
While Jacqueline Goldsmith tries to get information about her daughter, Chitara's brother, Morris, also learns about the shooting.
I was at school at the time. I didn't know about anything until I got home. And the first thing that I knew anything about any incident had happened was my mother texted me and said, your sister is dead.
Here's your hot and ready thin crust pepperoni pizza.
Ooh, crispy crust, toppings all the way to the edge, and I didn't have to order ahead.
You want pizza fast? You go with hot and ready.
Now I have time to live it up. Summer, here I come!
As Louisville police work to uncover the motives behind several shootings in the West End, family members struggle to learn the fate of their loved ones. Believing his sister is dead, Morris Goldsmith decides to head to the crime scene.
And when I got down to 32nd, man, the scene was just, it was crazy. Like, it was like cars put in the middle of the streets, the doors are still open and stuff. Like, the police lines wrapped around everywhere. You can't even get through. So I get to the scene where it actually happened, and the police detectives was like, no, you can't walk through, you can't be over here to do investigating. So I'm mad.
As Morris walks back to the car, an officer follows.
So when we get to the car, that's when the police officer tells me, listen, your sister's not dead. Because I was like, man, is she alive? Is she this? She's that? They said, no, she's in critical condition, but she is alive. She's at the hospital.
Morris races to the hospital and finds a scene that is equally chaotic. Morris asks to see his sister, Shatara. He's told she's in surgery and in critical condition.
My brother's already up there. And when I say my brother was like breaking down, he was like breaking down so bad because this is his little sister. He breaking down so bad that he's just like crying, like on the floor, crying, hitting the floor, all that. And I had to get my brother and say, hey man, like, gain your composure. You know what I'm saying? We gotta stand up. Like, we gotta be here. We gotta be strong.
You can feel all the tension in the air. And I'm scared that Shatara might not make it. And I was upset that all these people had died. It's kind of hard to explain. It's like you're there, but you're not there. And I remember my stepmother saying, she's gonna be all right, Jackie. We're gonna pray for her.
After several hours of nervous waiting, the Goldsmith family finally gets good news from the doctors. Shatara is out of surgery. It appears she'll make a full recovery. But their happiness is short-lived. Police inform them that Shatara was wounded after killing another woman.
They said Shatara shot the girl, and that's why the police shot her. And I was like, but why would Shatara just do that? You know what I'm saying? And then I said, something's got to be wrong, because it's not something she would just do just to be doing. I said to myself, in order for her to do something like that, something had to really, really, really been wrong.
By now, investigators at the scene speak to witnesses and identify the woman Shatara shot as 24-year-old Makiba Lee. Makiba was born in West Louisville and grew up in the Parkland neighborhood.
She was a happy child and always smiling. She loved to read and play games with family and friends.
After graduating from high school, Makiba began dating Tyson Mims.
Tyson Mims had a bad reputation. Tyson had a long rap sheet of crimes, including drug possession, concealing a weapon, and witness tampering. At one point, he was arrested for murder, but the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. If Makiba Lee really wanted to make something of her life, then Tyson Mims was the last person she wanted to be involved with.
In late 2010, Makiba found out she was pregnant with Tyson's baby, and in 2011, she gave birth to their son. But fractures soon formed in their relationship.
I think Makiba probably wanted Tyson to settle down a bit, maybe get a regular job and help raise their son. But not many bad boys want to do that. So Makiba decided to break things off for a while so she could focus on being a mom.
Becoming a mother also helped Makiba refocus on her future and becoming a better provider.
With the help of her family, she was preparing to enroll in Jefferson Community and Technical College to earn a degree in nursing.
Back at the scene of the second shooting, detectives struggled to uncover a motive. Detectives go back to the hospital to interview Shatara, but she's not in any condition to answer questions.
She suffered several serious gunshot wounds and lost a lot of blood. And as a result, she was heavily medicated by doctors and slept most of the time. So she was really of no help in the investigation.
Investigators working the first shooting continue questioning witnesses and are finally able to identify the two male victims as Craig Bland Jr. and Tyson Mims.
How did Craig and Tyson end up dead? And did their murders have something to do with Shatara shooting Makeba?
As detectives question more witnesses at the crime scene of the initial shooting, they are finally obtaining enough information to put some of the puzzle pieces into place.
Several witnesses said that Tyson pulled up at CJ's house, hopped out of the car, and pulled out a gun. Tyson had some friends with him. CJ was on the porch also with some friends. And then all of a sudden, people started shooting.
Tyson shot CJ in the stomach, and CJ shot Tyson in the face. Both CJ and Tyson sustained very serious wounds, and both are dead before paramedics arrive on scene.
For Craig Bland, it's a tragic end to a violent life lived on the streets of Louisville. Craig and Shatara had only dated for a few months when the relationship moved to the next level.
Craig was one of her first serious boyfriends. And I think that was her first real adult relationship she had.
CJ and Shatara's bond was magical. She felt compelled to be there for him, no matter what. And she lived by that, no matter what.
Shatara knew she'd found the one and fantasized about spending the rest of her life with Craig.
My sister always wanted to be that girl who was married. She wanted to always have that life. She wanted the American dream. She wanted the white picket fence, that dog, that husband. She wanted all of that.
But her mother felt like Shatara wouldn't find that idyllic life in Louisville.
I remember telling Shatara one time that maybe she should go to Florida, where her aunties is, and finish school down there. Shatara was like, well, Mama, if I go down there, he might not want to go with me. And I told Shatara, if he loves you, he'll follow you.
But the draw of the street was just too powerful for Craig.
If you stuck in the hood and you stuck in that mind frame where it's just all about money, drugs, guns, it's hard to move past that and do something else because you're so used to it.
Morris tried to convince his sister to focus on what's best for her.
Every once in a while, she would come to me and she would just, have a heart-to-heart with me about what's going on. And I would tell her, like, sis, at the end of the day, you gotta make sure that you okay. Like, I understand this is someone who you care about, someone you're trying to build a life with, but you gotta make sure that you okay.
Then, Shatara got news that made leaving Craig even more difficult.
Shatara found out she was pregnant. She told me she was happy, and she was happy with him. So I figured she'd be happy having the baby. She was brought up to be about family. We take care of one another. She didn't want to leave him and the baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, take the baby from him. She wasn't eager to leave that behind for anything. Leave him behind for anything.
Shatara continued trying to pull Craig from the streets, but instead found herself being sucked into that culture.
My sister was living a double life. Daytime, she's going to school, she's working, she's doing all that. But nighttime, when the sun go down, we in the streets with it. If that meant popping the pills, running around, beating up females we got beef with, she was with it. But she was really like night and day sometimes.
In April 2012, Shatara was arrested for assault and wanton endangerment, but thankfully no one was injured at the time. If Craig couldn't join Shatara to start a new life in Florida, then she was going to join Craig's life in his neighborhood. And eventually, that was going to lead to trouble.
While Shatara was totally committed to Craig, She had crossed paths on the street with Tyson Mims.
My sister was cool with Tyson and CJ. She actually had been knowing Tyson longer than she knew CJ. She came to me and she said, bruh, I got some stuff going on. And she's like, Tyson was telling me that he gonna do something to CJ.
The issue apparently had something to do with a murder that had occurred years prior, where Craig had testified at the trial. Apparently, the perpetrator was somehow related to Tyson Mims, and Mims never got over it.
My sister asked me, she said, bro, what can I do? And I just told her the truth. I was like, there's nothing that you can do because it's too deep. There's blood involved in this situation. People have lost their lives. People have been hurt in this situation. I said, but the best thing you can do, baby, is just stand to the side. You gotta let it play out. If you involve yourself in it, it's not gonna be good for nobody.
While detectives have answered many of the questions surrounding the first shooting, they still need to learn why Makiba Lee was killed. And to do that, they know they'll need to speak with Shatara. The shooting of a civilian by a police officer sparks an immediate internal investigation by the Louisville Police Department's Public Integrity Unit.
Anytime there's a police-involved shooting, which means that a police fired their weapon, there's an internal investigation to make sure that the detective or the officer has done everything in accordance with the law and policies.
Within hours of the shooting, officers who were in the area at the time of the shooting are extensively questioned. The investigation determines that sometime after the initial shooting, Makiba Lee arrived at the scene and wanted to see her boyfriend.
There was an officer whose job was to prevent anyone from wandering into the scene and possibly contaminating evidence. And he described a woman who approached him and asked, "Who got shot? Who got shot?"
The officer asked the woman who she was, and she said, "That's my baby daddy. Tyson's my baby daddy."
The officer was adamant that he couldn't let her through, and she became angry and started screaming, "This ain't over."
The officer watched Makiba, who was with a friend, walk away and disappear into the crowd. A few minutes later, Makiba returned and
said and started yelling at the crowd, screaming profanity, saying things like, "F you, this is some BS, this ain't over, F you, payback." Obviously, seeing the father of her child was an extremely traumatic event for Makiba, and you can certainly understand why she was so upset.
Makiba entered a large grassy area at the corner of 32nd and Greenwood, right where the WAVE news van was parked.
The officers see a crowd of people begin to gather in that area, and they worry that a fight is going to break out. So he grabs his partner and starts heading towards the field to try to prevent any violence.
Suddenly, another woman entered the picture. It was Shatara Goldsmith, who had come to the area in search of her boyfriend, Craig.
Shatara learns that Craig is dead, and like Makiba, she becomes extremely upset. Makiba's screaming at the crowd that she wants payback or retribution, and Shatara likely feels the same way.
Shatara had a license to carry a concealed weapon, so she always kept her gun on her.
It is not completely clear if Shatara knows Makiba, but Makiba is making enough ruckus for Shatara to be able to tell that she is related to the guy that killed her boyfriend. As the officers approach the grassy area, one of the officers see Shatara hold a gun up in the air and point it at Makiba. There are over 30 people in the general area, and they scatter everywhere. Of course, officers are trained to respond differently than regular people.
The officers screamed verbal commands for the woman to drop the gun.
The two officers are saying, drop the weapon, police." At the same time, they are lining up a shot to take out the shooter if they have to.
Shatara stood above her, continuing to fire bullets into her body at nearly point-blank range.
Everything just clicked off, and she pulled that gun out, and she shot every bullet she had into that girl.
She just keeps firing at Makiba. The officers, they describe it as an execution. One of the officers, he maneuvers his body so that he can have a clean shot without hitting an innocent bystander.
The officer hit Shatara in the leg. Suddenly, she then turns toward him, her gun pointed straight at his chest.
The officer immediately realizes that he is in her sight, so he fires 2 more. One officer tried to help Makiba, but she is shot multiple times and dies on the scene.
Shatara, in intense pain, asks the officer for help.
Shatara asks the officer, "Do you think I'm gonna lose my baby?"
Shatara was only 2 months pregnant, so she wasn't really showing, but she was even more so concerned because her boyfriend was gone.
Shatara tells the officer that if he gets her help, she would tell him exactly what happened.
A few minutes later, the ambulance arrives and they put her on a gurney. But the officers, they are so busy that they don't have time to talk to her before she goes to the hospital.
The internal investigation clears Louisville police officers of wrongdoing, determining that they were justified in using force to disarm Shatara.
So Shatara just murdered a woman in cold blood and was also a risk to many people nearby. So that was the account of the police officers. But the question is, will Shatara tell a different story?
After fatally shooting Makiba Lee, Shatara Goldsmith is herself shot by a Louisville police officer. The day after the shooting, Shatara is questioned at the hospital by detectives. But she claims she doesn't remember anything about the shooting.
She basically said that all she remembered was Craig being on the ground. And then she heard someone saying she would be next. And then the next thing she remembered was bullets hitting her. She absolutely could not remember anything involving the shooting of Makiba.
Who knows where her mind was at the time, you know what I'm saying? She was probably so devastated that she probably wasn't even thinking at all or thinking right at all.
When someone goes through an extremely traumatic experience, it can cause them to react and do something they wouldn't normally do. I believe that day when she saw Craig's dead body lying on the ground, she realized that she wasn't going to get the perfect life that she so much wanted. And so she lashed out at the only thing she had available to her, the girlfriend of the man she believed to have killed Craig. She didn't really kill for her man as much as she did because of her man.
The trauma of being shot causes Shatara to lose her pregnancy.
She was highly, highly, highly upset because Shatara doesn't have any children, and that would have been her first child.
3 days after the shooting, Shatara is released from the hospital and booked into jail. She's charged with murder and wanton endangerment.
And I told her, like, sis, you know, I don't condone what you did. Because I don't condone taking life. I'm gonna ride in this car with you. I'm on your side. Right, wrong, good or bad, whatever. And she told me, like, she's not proud of it. She's not proud. It's not something that she walks around with that she feels like she was justified for. And I want to make this clear for everyone. If she don't feel justified for it, she don't feel like she was right for it, any of that.
On Monday, May 21st, 4 days after the shootings, a funeral for Makiba Lee takes place at Portland Memorial Baptist Church in West Louisville.
Attending Makiba's funeral was as sad as it could be, and you felt the weight in that space where her services were happening at. The weight was deep, the loss is deep, and people's hearts went out to our entire family.
There were concerns amongst the family and community in general that there might be more violence, perhaps retaliation against the Lee family. And so there was a very heavy police presence outside of the funeral.
Unfortunately, over time, because of the redundancy of violent crime acts, the police presence at funeral homes has been kind of a staple in Metro Louisville now, because funeral providers will ask for that. Families were asked for that, and they deserve that, to try to have some sense of peace in regards to what has happened to their loved one.
It's a scene that's repeated in the funerals for Craig Bland Jr. and Tyson Mims.
When you look at the Lee family, the Bland family, the Mims family, the Goldsmith family, when you look at that situation, from my perspective, you gotta look at it from a perspective of devastation across the board. So all you can do is be sympathetic to the constant unfortunate cycle that we've been subjected to when these things happen, of trying to figure out when will we see better days.
In March 2015, Shatara enters an Alford plea to the charges against her.
An Alford plea means that you don't take responsibility for what happened, but you understand that there's enough evidence to show that you were responsible.
For some, the plea raises eyebrows.
There was enough evidence of what happened and what she did. Everybody saw it. But the court system in this country works in weird ways that are hard to understand. There were a lot of people involved in that violence, and a lot of those people live in that neighborhood, and that violence continues. So even though a lot of people saw it, that doesn't mean after the fact that they felt safe saying what they saw.
The Commonwealth attorney said that if they would have took this case to trial, that they probably would convict her of manslaughter instead of murder.
Shatara is sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20.
Makiba's mother, she was so frustrated about the light sentence for such a cold-blooded murder that she called it a slap on the wrist.
I don't think Shatara got a slap on the wrist. I don't think she got a slap on the wrist at all. And I understand that once your child dies, that child is not coming back, but there are circumstances to everything. And I know that Shatara didn't do it purposely, that she snapped, that was something that she didn't mean to do. And so I don't think 25 years of her life or 20 years of her life is a slap on the wrist. 20 years is a whole lifetime for some folks.
At the hearing, Shatara does take responsibility for her actions, while continuing to claim she doesn't really know why she killed Makiba Lee.
Makiba's death was completely senseless. She didn't do anything wrong. The only thing she was doing was mourning the death of her man, so she had no reason to be killed by Shatara.
Shatara's very remorseful, and she's very sorry. She's sorry for Makiba. She's sorry for Makiba's child that is raised without a mother. And she's sorry that all of that happened. We've had conversations where she was like, Mama, if I could do it all over again, I just would have went to Florida and none of this would have happened.
Shatara is serving her time at Kentucky's Correctional Institution for Women, Pewee Valley. But her popularity among prisoners doesn't prevent her from getting into trouble. In fact, it seems to add to it.
Every time something goes on, they always making it like Shatara is the one who's causing all these problems, or they put her in the hole a lot and everything, because she is opinionated and she tells them, you know, that she's a human being and she has rights. And when she tries to stick up for her rights, then they want to stick her in the hole all the time.
Those who understand 2012 can never erase it from their mind. It will go down as one of the saddest, heartbreaking days in Louisville Metro history. Simple as that. There's no other way to describe it. Not from my perspective.
This was one of the deadliest and most violent days that we had experienced. And so after that, the mayor put together a task force to deal with the crime in the city and in the Parkland neighborhood, in those neighborhoods that repeatedly see the crime, pulled together a lot of members of the community to come up with some solutions to stop it.
But solutions have proved elusive.
So did 2012 and that earth-shattering devastation change the behavior? Not necessarily so. Because the evidence is really strong right now that we're in a deeper hole, even compared to back then with the data and the numbers. Diseases are not easily cured, right? Violent crime situations are not going to be easily cured. That does not mean you don't keep treating the situation. We have to keep treating it. We have to keep putting resources towards it.
We'll never find solutions as long as people will continue to take the law in their own hands. The cycle of retribution needs to be stopped. Shatara may have thought she was doing this for Craig, but nothing she could do would bring him back. Instead, she ruined her life and that of Makiba's child, who will grow up without a mother or a father.
First loves can be very special relationships. But trying to change others to match our vision for them is a fool's errand. And the results can, under the wrong conditions, lead to tragic consequences. The saying goes, a best friend is one soul abiding in two bodies. It's an unbreakable bond that stands the test of time.
They really believed they were family. They were sisters, not biological sisters, but they referred to themselves as sisters and best friends.
They spent a lot of time together, you know. All the things the teenage girls did, they did together, and they were inseparable.
And when a woman finds love in a partner, it's an even deeper soul tie that knows no bounds.
Nice looking guy, tall, brown skinned, muscular, very well dressed, smelled so good. I thought that he was a real respectful young man. He had a strong faith in God.
Sometimes what appears to be true love is nothing but pure evil.
He has started controlling and dominating her life.
She had cuts along her face. The road rash on her was terrible. Her clothes were tattered and torn.
But relentless devotion to a lover can sever the tight bonds of friendship.
Women are put into positions to where they end up doing something that they don't necessarily want to do because of the actions of their partners.
She just kept saying, they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
October 17th, 2015, Dearborn, Michigan.
Dearborn is approximately 26 square miles. It sits on the west side of Detroit. Detroit borders it on three sides of our city.
It is a good mix of every different nationality background with a lot of culture in it.
Just before midnight, a man driving along Interstate 94 spots a terrifying sight. A woman, obviously badly hurt, running across the highway and waving her arms for help.
She was saying, hey, I'm been kidnapped, I need help immediately. They're going to come back and kill me. She just kept saying, they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
The woman jumps into the man's car and begs for help. Thankfully, there's a gas station still open at the bottom of the off-ramp.
Detroit police officers just happened to be at the gas station when this car pulled up, and the gentleman got out and said, I have this girl, she just jumped in my car. She said she was kidnapped. Police started looking at him, believing he might have been involved somehow, because her injuries were so extensive that they just couldn't believe this story that they were hearing.
Officers turn to the injured woman and try to get more information about what's happened.
The injured woman identified herself as 21-year-old LaToya Britton.
LaToya was born in the Detroit area and was raised by her mother. As a teenager, she never had trouble making friends.
I met LaToya in 8th grade, and since then, me and LaToya been thick as thieves, best friends. Latoya and Patricia, they spent a lot of time together, you know, going to dinner, talking to boys, dressing alike, all the things the teenage girls did, they did together. And they were inseparable. Latoya came from a one-parent home. It was just her mother raising her. So she did happen to spend quite a bit of time at our home. We was mad, like sisters. She called my mama and daddy, mama and daddy. She was the first person I told I was pregnant. She was the only one I knew. He was like 15.
With the baby's father out of the picture, Patricia leaned on Latoya for support.
Most girls would say, you know what? We're not on the same level anymore. But she just maintained that friendship, that bond with Patricia.
Patricia also relied on her close and loving family.
We had a beautiful bungalow house, me and my mom, my dad. That was nice. I just went to school, took my baby to daycare, and I had support of my mom and dad.
A lot of times when we think about young mothers who haven't finished high school, they feel like, oh, my life is over, I have to raise a child, there's nothing left for me. But Patricia wasn't that way. She still wanted to finish high school.
I'm getting older. I didn't want to live with my parents anymore. I wanted to provide. I wanted to work. I decided I love to cook. By then, I was working at the hospital as a cook.
Living on her own, Patricia still stayed tight with her folks, and together, they found a new church.
I was active in church. She was active in church, and we just was there, a permanent fixture.
For Patricia, church soon became about more than just a rousing sermon. There was also a handsome man who caught her eye.
Nice looking guy, tall, brown skinned, muscular, very well dressed, smelled so good.
Patricia sees Terrell Smith in church and thought that she may have found a good one this time. He's into church and he's interacting with her young son.
I thought that he was a real respectful young man. He had a strong faith in God. He was always there. Just a nice young man.
While Patricia and Latoya were carving their own paths, they managed to stay in touch.
For them to still be friends after all of that time says a lot about their relationship and the love they have for each other.
But now, police want to know how Latoya wound up riddled with injuries in the back of a man's vehicle.
That driver I had interviewed, he was immediately looked at as a suspect by Detroit Police Department until he was able to be cleared when Latoya confirmed his story.
Officers aren't able to get much information from Latoya before she's rushed to the hospital, but they alert dispatch that she's on her way.
I got a call in the middle of the night that a young lady had been kidnapped and that my team and I needed to respond and find out what happened to her.
At the time, the information that I was provided is that a male and a female subject had kidnapped another female subject, had placed her in the trunk of the car, and were driving her eastbound on I-94 from the city of Dearborn into the city of Detroit. And at some point during this incident, the female that was in the trunk of the car popped the trunk using the emergency hatch and was able to jump out of the car onto I-94.
Detectives arrive at the hospital hoping Latoya can provide more information about her kidnappers.
She was completely distraught when we first saw her. She was all bandaged up along her arms and her legs. She had cuts along her face. She had just jumped from a car doing approximately 70 miles an hour down the expressway, timing it not to get hit by other cars. So the road rash on her was terrible.
Latoya can barely speak, but what she does say shocks Detective Wilson.
Latoya immediately said this was my best friend who did this to me, Patricia Jernigan, and her boyfriend Terrell.
In the early morning hours of October 18, 2015, Dearborn detectives are trying to piece together what happened to 21-year-old LaToya Britton. LaToya claims she was kidnapped by two people, Terrell Smith and her own best friend, Patricia Jernigan.
She's describing her best friend and her best friend's boyfriend capturing her, and he had a gun in hand. The initial conversation with LaToya was very minimal. It was more about taking care of her injuries and working on the information that we had. She said that her cell phone was taken from her. So step one was locate the cell phone, locate Patricia, and locate Terrell. We didn't know if Patricia was a victim in this case or if she was a willing participant. So the goal was to make sure she was safe, because the initial information that we had from LaToya was Terrell was the one with a gun.
I started contacting the cell phone providers to get call detail records, as well as their cell tower location information.
While the forensics team works on tracking LaToya Britton's cell phone, Detective Wilson heads over to speak to LaToya, who was just released from the hospital.
The follow-up interview was done in her living room. She was still dealing with her significant injuries. I sat down in the chair in the living room there and spoke with her in detail about this. She starts telling me that Patricia has been her childhood best friend. Patricia was really doing well for herself, that she had a great family, and that once she had met Terrell, that things had just changed, that Terrell, he was very controlling.
Terrell insisted on knowing everything about Patricia's friends, especially LaToya.
She said that Terrell had always been jealous of their friendship, that there's no way that two females could be that close to each other, that have that good of a relationship or friendship. So there was always that jealousy that he harbored for LaToya.
LaToya says she wasn't comfortable with the situation and cut off all contact with Patricia. The two friends did not speak or text for months. Then, in mid-October of 2015, LaToya is contacted by her one-time best friend.
Patricia said she wanted to reconnect their friendship and go to dinner.
Patricia picks LaToya up from her home, and they're on their way to have dinner. Patricia stops the car down the street, and she's like, hey, let me put the restaurant in the GPS, which is normal.
Patricia had grabbed LaToya's cell phone when Terrell had came out of a set of bushes that were around a corner.
LaToya runs down the street. Terrell catches her and hits her in the head with the gun.
He had pushed LaToya into the trunk of the car at that point and had grabbed her breasts and had threatened her to the point where she was fearful and had to cooperate with his demands.
LaToya is saying how she's been forced into this trunk. There's no way that she knows where she's being taken to. She's thinking, I can scream and maybe somebody will hear me. However, she notices that they're turning the music up louder and louder. She's noticing the car is accelerating, so they can't hear, or anybody can't hear her screams.
She said that she was well aware that night she was going to die. Wherever Patricia and Terrell wanted to take her, she wasn't going to survive another day.
LaToya makes the choice that I would rather jump out of a moving vehicle than fear a person taking my life from me.
She remembered looking for that emergency latch in the trunk in order to pull it to hopefully save herself and be able to jump. And when she made that jump and she figured that the timing was safe enough, it's now or never, she was wearing a crossbody purse. The strap had actually caught onto the trunk, so she was dangling for a moment in time, and finally the strap broke. And that's when she was released and tumbled to the ground.
Hearing the details of LaToya's harrowing story raises the stakes for detectives.
The first thing that we do is look at the criminal history. Looking at Patricia's history, she had a very minimal history. There was no reason that she should be involved in something this heinous. But then looking forward at Terrell's history, criminal history, it was extensive. And in fact, he already had a conviction for a previous kidnapping.
Welcome to Old El Paso, where standing stuff shells never topple, no matter how rowdy your game night. Where we celebrate Tex-Mex Mondays, Taco Tuesdays, and Fajita Fridays. Where there ain't nothing weak about weeknights. Go on, get yourself some in Old El Paso.
What's the square root of pi?
Some things just add up, like the 2x2
On October 17th, 2015, a botched kidnapping left LaToya Britton physically and psychologically battered. The next morning, two suspects, Terrell Smith and Patricia Jernigan, are still on the loose, and detectives have only LaToya's missing cell phone to work with.
Initially, with the cell phone pings, we were able to get those under what's called exigent circumstances. And essentially at that point, what we are saying is that there is an emergency, that there's a risk of somebody being hurt and or killed, and that we need to find, this device because we believe it's going to lead us to the suspects.
But someone had turned LaToya's phone off, so there was no way to track the device. Investigators turned to social media as a possible way to find the suspect's location.
In this case, when we were able to serve the search warrant on to the social media sites, we asked them to expedite it due to the nature of the crime, and that we needed to find these people right away, which they were able to do for us.
In the early morning hours of October 19th, the local internet service provider contacts detectives with an IP address that is pinging from inside of a residence located on Detroit's east side.
Once we received this information back from the providers, we in turn gave it to our undercover officers.
Several Detroit PD units quickly scramble and race to the address to get into position.
Our undercover crew was watching the house and monitoring any movement that was taking place in the house. That's when they were able to see Terrell, but without him coming out of the house, there was no way to make a safe approach into the house, knowing that Terrell was armed with a handgun.
Just after 1 p.m., detectives observed Terrell drive away in a silver Neon, registered to Patricia Jernigan.
At that point, our undercover team that was watching the house had begun to follow and tail him, calling out every move that he made, every turn. Most people, when they're being followed, are completely unaware, except for he kept looking over his shoulders. You could tell that he was paranoid.
Terrell pulls into a business parking lot and parks near the building.
The parking lot was an area that was ideal for pulling in the undercover cars to surround his car and pin him in. He was taken out of the car and immediately placed on the ground. There wasn't a weapon on him at that point.
As Terrell is taken into custody, Patricia suddenly walks out into the parking lot. Terrell was there to pick her up from work.
Then Patricia came out to see what was happening.
Police came, I seemed like they came out of everywhere, and they screamed and yelling, "I'm under arrest."
And that's when she was brought over to my car. I asked to have a conversation with her about why we were there and what was going on. And we sat down and had a basic girl conversation of what's going on and what information do you have for us.
Yeah, she's like, "You're free to leave, you're not under arrest." It's the only thing I remember. And I remember I kept asking, "I gotta get my son." And she's like, "We gonna let you get your son?"
Patricia's demeanor, I mean, she was nervous. You could hear her voice shaking. You could see the nerves on her. She knew that she needed to give me some sort of story.
First thing is like, don't tell her the truth, lie. Lie, maybe she'll let you go. Because I didn't know, never been in trouble, so it's like, I didn't know.
She said that LaToya had agreed to go to dinner with her and that she was picking her up. There was an argument over some money that LaToya had asked for a cell phone bill. There was some pushing and shoving that occurred, and Patricia had pushed LaToya out of the car, but she denied Terrell's involvement at all during that interaction.
Detectives ask Patricia if she'll come with them to the station for further questioning.
She was quiet the entire ride back to the police department that she agreed to go to. She just sat there quietly, and she kept asking about her son. Her son was her biggest priority. She wanted to get home to her son. She appeared to be remorseful, but she appeared to be very scared and nervous.
On the way to the police station, detectives make Patricia an offer.
I told her that I'd be willing to give her a polygraph in order to clear her from this, in order to see if her story was going to pan out. A truthful person is going to immediately jump all over a polygraph exam. In Patricia's case, she was forthcoming and said, no, I'm not going to pass this polygraph test.
Two days after the kidnapping of LaToya Britton, suspects Terrell Smith and Patricia Jernigan are both in custody of the Dearborn police. But only Terrell has been placed under arrest.
At that point, she hadn't done anything to place herself in a position where she would be under arrest, but she knew that we needed to talk further. So she agreed to come back to the Dearborn police station where we drove her.
At the Dearborn headquarters, Detective Wilson sits down alone with Patricia.
It's just Patricia and I having this conversation, and at this time she begins to open up more. She knew that there were some issues that were going on. So she basically recounts the whole incident as LaToya tells me.
Help! I remember that night. I never forget this night. I had to get drunk because I was so out of it. I did not want to do it, but I was stuck between this rock and this hard place. I remember driving over there, and I remember texting her, like, I'm outside.
She says that they were going to go to dinner, that Terrell had went to Dollar General to purchase a toy gun because the intention was to get that money that LaToya was borrowing back. She described that this was the plan to kidnap her, that she was in on the gun being involved, that she had dropped Terrell off initially in those bushes in order for him to rob her, to point this toy gun in her face.
Patricia tells detectives that once Terrell got in the car, things escalated quickly.
I remember her just screaming and crying like, Trish, for real, Trish, for real. And I'm trying to call it off like, Terrell, leave her alone, just stop. Terrell, leave it alone, like, just stop, leave her alone. But back then, it seemed like everything raveling so fast. And I just remember her screaming. And I'm like, Terrell, let her go, just let her go. Just please let her go.
Patricia says it's then that Terrell forces LaToya into the trunk of the car and tells Patricia to keep driving.
And I just look, I see in the rearview mirror the trunk come up. And I heard a boom, boom, boom. And we get off on that first exit, maybe the second. And I see her running. I see her run, I'm like, Terrell, just let her go, let her go, let her go. He get back up on the exit, trying to get her, by then she gone.
It was very clear that Patricia was involved and not a victim at this point. As soon as she had said something that was self-incriminating, she was no longer free to leave.
That's the only thing I do remember. You know, Patricia, you're under arrest. And I just remember, like, can I call Mama to get my son? She said, yeah, I called. And I called her for phone. I'm like, well, I guess they went to my mom's house looking for me. She's like, sweetie, what's going on? Where's LaToya? It's police is here? Nah, my mom hysterical crying. So I said, Mom, I'm gonna let the detective tell you.
And she told me, she said, your daughter is involved in the kidnapping. You know, it's serious charges. Patricia's got some serious things against her.
At the conclusion of our interview, she was handcuffed, she was walked downstairs to our booking area, and she was placed in a holding cell until she was formally charged.
On October 23, 2015, just 1 week after the kidnapping of LaToya Britton, Patricia Jernigan and Terrell Smith are arraigned together.
In that courtroom when they were being arraigned, the realization had come that she wasn't going home to her son, that she was in too deep because of this man.
We got arraigned, and I remember standing there next to him. They had us cuffed together. And I remember the judge like, Patricia, are you aware you standing next to a fourth-time habitual?
When Patricia first met Terrell Smith, he seemed like the perfect man for her.
I was in the middle of the church, and he came and approached me like, can I take him to the vending machine? I'm like, yeah. So I walked with him with Mari to the vending machine. Then he asked me, am I single? I'm like, yeah. He said, you know, you should call me. He said, but stop like this. He said, but I just want to be honest with you. I'm just getting out of prison and I'm on tether. He's on GPS tether, which means he's being monitored and watched by his parole officer.
She believed that if God can forgive people, who are we not to forgive? You know, but I had, you know, my doubts. You know, this is my daughter, my baby.
He told me in the beginning that he got incarcerated for carjacking. Him and his girlfriend was into it. The car was in her name. He took the car, she reported it, but it was more to it.
Patricia never pressed Terrell on what really landed him in prison.
A lot of times, because you want something so bad, you tend to make excuses. So a lot of red flags are overlooked by the mentality of, I want what I want, so I will overlook that and then maybe I can fix it.
Things seemed so right in the beginning. It seemed like, okay, you know, Trish, this your person. And he was a gentleman, so respectable. Everything felt right.
Handcuffed together and standing just inches from Terrell, Patricia learns for the first time why he had been in prison before they met. Carrying a concealed weapon, firearm felony, carjacking, and unlawful imprisonment.
And I just remember crying, looked over at him, nothing. He didn't say nothing, no emotion.
Initially, both Patricia and Terrell were charged with the same crimes because of their involvement together. They were charged with kidnapping, torture, criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, and armed robbery.
At this point, I was telling her, sweetie, we just want you to do what is right. Cooperate. Tell the truth. But at this point, she still was not talking because Terrell was still in her head. And it took maybe a couple weeks of me going back and forth, getting in her ear, that she finally started breaking down and being honest of the extent of what had happened that night.
Finally, Patricia requests to meet with Detective Wilson one more time.
This is when she opened up more. She talked about the plan, that LaToya was going to be that conquest for Terrell, that she wanted to make her boyfriend happy. And she said the whole story about giving her money for the cell phone bill, that was all fabricated. That was just something to save herself during the initial interview with me. She talked about the abuse that she had endured through the years while dating Terrell. So she had seen his real gun before and was in fear of him. Her biggest fear was that if she didn't help him and participate and orchestrate this, that she would be killed alongside LaToya at the conclusion of this.
Prosecutors approach Patricia about a possible reduced sentence if she agrees to testify against Terrell Smith.
My lawyer said if I go to trial, I could get more time than him because he wasn't able to get to her if it weren't for me. They said, you gotta testify, you gotta go to court, you gotta take the stand. I said, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I was willing to take this 15.
Patricia Jernigan is being held in Wayne County Jail awaiting trial for the attempted kidnapping of LaToya Britton. Prosecutors have offered a reduced sentence if Patricia agrees to testify against Terrell Smith. But so far, she's been too terrified to take the stand against her ex-boyfriend.
I remember crying, talking to my mama, and I remember my mama saying, you know what, sweetie? If you're not trying to testify against him, don't worry about seeing your son. Me and your daddy would get custody of him. It's like, we done. And from that moment, that's when I got the courage to testify.
As prosecutors build a case against Terrell Smith, they learn more about how he was able to so quickly get Patricia on board with his twisted plan.
He wanted to try to prove himself to be that good young man who could be a father figure to Patricia's son.
But after Patricia and Terrell got an apartment together, the relationship turned quickly.
I noticed that he always wanted to see my phone, see who I'm texting, who am I talking to. If I didn't answer his phone call at a certain time or I missed a phone call, then it went from he wanted my Facebook passwords. So I did it, but then it got to him messaging people, seeing who am I talking to, messaging guys acting like me. It just got too much, and then we got to arguing about his controlling ways. And that's when I really saw that dark side of him.
While she was with Terrell, not only was he taking her employment money, her income tax money, her child care, he was taking her child support. He was taking that.
Yeah, I was questioning it. And I'm like, was this a good choice? Am I making the right decision? Like, sweetie, get out of it. But then, you know, I'm on the other side, like, I love him, he loved me. Like, it get better, it get better, it get better. And it didn't. It started off as loving. Started as loving, beautiful. Sex was normal. But as it progressed, it started being like it's forced. Terrell wanted to do threesomes. I wasn't experienced with that, you know? I didn't know. I wasn't into that. But I wanted to please him, wanted to satisfy him.
When the level of intimacy is introduced into any relationship, it then changes the dynamics for the person. A lot of times it's an uncomfortable feeling, but you negate that feeling because you're like, well, he loves me.
It went far as Terrell would meet women off different dating apps and bring them home. Then it went to him trying to get my friends, trying to talk to my friends. He been wanted LaToya. He had this sick obsession with her. He came up with this plan that he wanted LaToya.
Terrell wants to have not only control over Patricia's life, but he also wants to break LaToya.
Yeah, me and Toya stopped being friends because of Terrell. So he got to texting LaToya, acting like me. It was his phone number, but Toya didn't even know my phone number. It was him, acting like me and him broke up. I don't know, it's like he had a hold on me, like some ungodly hold on me.
Even behind the thick walls of jail, Terrell tries to control Patricia.
What he was doing in the interim between the arraignment and the trial, he somehow found a way to get messages to Patricia in jail to get her not to talk or to flip on him.
You still won't let me be free. You took so much from me. You still won't let me go.
Terrell's trial finally begins on April 13th, 2016. On the morning Patricia was scheduled to testify, she didn't think she could pull it off.
You get bonded over to Frank Murphy, you know, the big court. I'm terrified, like, I'm scared. I just remember The bailiff, the officer, opened the door. Are you ready? As I'm walking, I'm crying, and I stop. He said, you can do this. There's Miriam telling me, you can do this. You're gonna be okay.
The number one piece of evidence is the body.
You could tell that this was not your typical homicide.
All new Deadly Case Files, Monday at 10, only on TV One.
Did you hear about the plan from TV Wonderland? Sitcoms on the weekends with friends.
Facing charges of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, armed robbery, and criminal sexual conduct, Terrell Smith goes on trial in April of 2016. His former girlfriend and alleged co-conspirator, Patricia Jernigan, is the prosecution's star witness.
And they asked me this hard question was, what was he gonna do to her? And I told her, he was gonna rape her. He wanted me to watch. Toya, she screams, Trish. And that's when I just got to crying.
The entire truth behind it was that the plan was to kidnap, rape, and then kill LaToya. LaToya didn't know about it. Normally, if I know about it, I would give the victim a heads up. I didn't know until Patricia was up on that stand talking about it. So when it came out, LaToya's reaction was so raw, which made it even more raw for Patricia. The jury ended up finding Terrell guilty on all counts. He was subsequently sentenced to 42 to 65 years at the Michigan Department of Corrections that he's serving out in northern Michigan at this time.
In return for her testimony, Patricia is given a reduced sentence.
And the sentencing, the judge told Patricia what the verdict was. It had been passed down. And, you know, her time would be 5 to 15 years. And we looking at her with tears. At this point, I've never seen my husband cry. He's looking at her with tears. I'm looking at her with tears. We're constrained. It's nothing we can do to help her.
I have this saying where I'm built to last. That's who I say I am. My first 2 years was hard. I lost my daddy. My daddy died. And the hardest thing is burying somebody in prison. That's the hardest thing ever. And I never got to apologize to my daddy. Like, I never got to deeply apologize to him. And I always had like this thing in my mind that like I put so much grief and burden on my daddy that helped kill him. Like, you know, you think like that.
With good behavior and credit for time served, Patricia is eligible for parole after 4.5 years in prison.
I remember going to the parole agent and I just remember like, just, you want to get out of here? Just be honest. And he asked me like, why are you here? And I told him. I said I was so in love with this man. This man had such a hold on me that I didn't care about nothing or no one. I was willing to do any and everything for this man. And I remember his answer was like, that's it. He said, you got a question for me? I'm like, do I got my parole? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, yes, after 5 years, I'm going home.
For Patricia, full recovery will take some time.
Why am I choosing to do it now? To help with my journey. I'm tired of like keeping this a secret. Because how am I ever gonna heal for something if I'm keeping this a secret? Because he had messed me up in so many areas that I'm trying to still recover and rebuild myself as a woman.
Unfortunately, we see a lot of these circumstances to where women are put into positions to where they end up doing something that they don't necessarily want to do because of the actions of their partners.
She knew in her heart that it didn't feel right, but she couldn't reach out and she couldn't ask for that help. So I would just encourage people to reach out and ask for that help because it is there and it is available, and you don't have to be stuck in a situation like this.
With any woman, we have intuition. Learn how to stop ignoring your intuition. Learn how to ask for the things that you need.
By passion, it can be all-consuming, vice the friendships we cherish most, and imperil their lives. And once those ties are shattered, they may never be repaired.